In the heart of a desolate land, now a sprawling graveyard for countless fallen souls, the remnants of a war that could never be won lingered. Life had been stripped away in the relentless pursuit of victory, leaving the few survivors with a single, primal desire: survival. Beyond this instinct, there seemed little reason to continue in a world so thoroughly scarred by conflict. Yet, among the survivors, one figure had endured through unimaginable hardships, emerging as the protagonist of our tale. Having faced defeat 98 times, he now approached what he believed might be the final chapter of his arduous journey. A brilliant, almost blinding light beckoned him forward as he stepped into a vast chamber, where a formidable cadre of sentinel golems awaited. As he surveyed the towering figures before him, he couldn't help but question whether this was truly his 20th mission. Behind the imposing golems, a dark tunnel stretched into the unknown, suggesting these sentinels guarded something far more significant. His resolve hardened, and with a focused determination, he summoned his weapon. A crimson scythe materialized in his grip, its blade gleaming ominously. The moment the golems caught sight of the weapon, their eyes flared with renewed intensity, as if awakening from a deep slumber. With a unified purpose, these colossal sentinels advanced, their heavy weapons poised to strike. The battle commenced as they launched their coordinated assault, aiming to crush the lone warrior. However, his agility proved to be his greatest asset, allowing him to evade their deadly blows with swift, graceful movements. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. With unshakable determination, he invoked the insignia of death, a powerful incantation. Above the leading golem, a dark, menacing circle adorned with the symbol of a grim skull appeared, marking the sentinel with a sinister curse. Cloaked in a fiery, dark aura, our hero's speed surged beyond the golem's reach. Seizing the moment, he delivered a devastating strike. The crimson scythe carved through the guardian's massive frame, leaving a gaping wound in its wake. As he stepped back, a satisfied smile crossed his face. The plan had worked flawlessly. Insignia of death had doubled the damage of his attack, ensuring his success. But the victory was short-lived. As the first golem crumbled, the remaining sentinels surged forward, their fury unbridled. They charged at him, intent on tearing him apart, the battle far from over. He was like a mere insect before these colossal monsters, dwarfed by their towering forms. Yet, the overwhelming disparity in size did nothing to deter him. Undaunted by their intimidating presence, he launched himself into the air, summoning a technique known as the Knight of Death. This skill imbued his weapon with a sinister, dark energy specifically designed to counter the sanctity of his opponents. Slowly, the darkness spread, consuming the radiant light that once bathed the temple in a holy glow. The golems, guardians of the sacred place, were soon engulfed in the encroaching shadow, rendering them blind to their surroundings. Seizing the opportunity, the hero unleashed a cataclysmic strike, a wave of energy so powerful it could obliterate an entire horde of enemies in an instant. However, despite his calm demeanor, it quickly became evident that even this massive attack had failed to harm the guardian golems. With uncanny precision, the holy creatures retaliated, charging their arrows with the pure elements of fire and ice before launching them at the hero with deadly accuracy. Each arrow whizzed past him, narrowly missing its mark, threatening to end him with every shot. Realizing the imminent danger, the hero knew he needed to move faster to avoid the relentless barrage. Without hesitation, he leaped directly into the path of the advancing golems, meeting them head-on. His incredible speed allowed him to create afterimages that bewildered the guardians, causing them to strike at illusions rather than the real target. In a counterattack, one of the golems notched several arrows in rapid succession, firing them with such velocity that they broke the speed of light, obliterating nearly every illusion the hero had created. Despite the grave situation, the hero remained composed, even managing a taunting smile. He goaded the golems, mockingly suggesting that their efforts were far from enough to defeat him. But his confident facade quickly faded when a sudden burst of light erupted beneath him. To his shock, an unexpected magical seal on the floor had triggered a trap, summoning a massive block of ice that encased him completely, immobilizing him. His vaunted speed, which had been his greatest asset just moments before, was now utterly useless. Trapped, he fought with all his might to shatter the ice, slowly causing cracks to form. As he struggled, the golems closed in, one of them preparing to strike a fatal blow with a colossal spear. The cracks in the ice grew wider, but it still refused to break. In a desperate bid for freedom, the hero invoked another powerful skill, Moonlight Destruction. The ice surrounding him turned a deep crimson, and with a flash of brilliant red light, it shattered, releasing him from his icy prison. The unleashed attack not only freed him but also annihilated the guardian golem standing before him, unleashing the full power he had been holding back. His equipment, now enhanced by the use of this skill, underwent a transformation, becoming even more formidable. He acknowledged that he had come dangerously close to losing the battle, nearly failing the mission. After expending considerable time and energy battling the guardian golems, the hero made a crucial decision: to end the fight with a single, all-consuming strike. As the dark, malevolent aura around his scythe grew more intense, signaling the impending climax of the confrontation, the guardian golems prepared their most devastating attacks in response. Weapons capable of mass destruction, arrows charged with potent magic, and powerful seals were all ready, setting the stage for the final, decisive clash. Our hero retaliated with a powerful stomp, channeling immense energy into his scythe as he prepared to strike. With a fierce determination, he unleashed his moonlight destruction skill, now amplified by an overwhelming surge of dark power. But this time, the aura surrounding him was further enhanced by another skill, the red moon. The result was a devastating slash with a much wider reach, similar to the one that had shattered the ice earlier. The once dominant golems were cleaved through effortlessly, their massive forms falling to the ground as lifeless husks. As the protagonist landed, a sense of relief washed over him, knowing that these formidable enemies were finally defeated. Without hesitation, he ventured deeper into the mysterious area, heading towards the chamber that the Guardians had been protecting. However, as he advanced, an unsettling feeling crept over him. The surroundings resembled a temple, but there was something eerily vacant about the place. He approached the door at the far end, uncertain of what awaited him beyond it. As he neared, a magic circle inscribed on the floor began to glow and shift. With resolute determination, the hero stepped into the center of the circle, curious to see what would happen next. A rueful smile crossed his lips as he stood there, wondering if this would be the moment he finally completed the game on his 99th attempt. But his hope was quickly shattered when a notification appeared, informing him that only one player out of 5 was present on the magic circle. The harsh reality hit him: he needed a group of 5 to access the boss room. The notification warned that failing to meet this requirement would result in death. As he absorbed this grim truth, the weight of all his struggles and sacrifices seemed to evaporate. A golden light enveloped him, forming an impenetrable barrier that resisted all his efforts to escape. In his final moments, he cursed the absurdity of this last, impossible prerequisite, but his anger was futile. His body began to disintegrate, and he couldn't help but question if this was truly the end. The grim realization dawned on him as the game confirmed his death, with the countdown ticking away the last seconds of his life. But just as despair threatened to consume him, a hidden power activated, a rune known as Regression. This final act would mark the 100th use of the Regression rune, sending the last surviving hero back in time to the moment before his first mission began. With the activation of the rune, it would vanish forever, but the protagonist would start his journey anew, embarking on his 100th regression. The scene shifts to a Korean palace, situated in the heart of the city, where the story begins once again. It is the last day of the year, and a crowd has gathered to celebrate the coming of the new year. As the final 5 seconds of the year approached, a radiant blue aura enveloped the body of a lone figure. His discomfort was palpable as he realized that he had returned to his previous life. The moment he glanced at his hands, recognition dawned: this was the very instant before everyone was pulled into that stupid game. Clenching his fists, the man recalled how close he had come to winning, vowing to change his fate as he prepared to face the challenge once more. He was in the 20th round, teetering on the brink of another failure. As the clock ticked down to the final 2 seconds before disaster struck, he fantasized about freezing time, longing for just a moment more to find a way out. His mind flashed back to the message he received from the system after his last death. This was his 100th use of the Regression rune. The stakes were higher than ever, and he knew this might be his final chance to win. As the year's last seconds approached, the man who would be our protagonist steeled himself, determined to finish the game once and for all. He couldn't forget the critical requirement he failed to meet during the 20th round, the need to recruit 4 additional players. Now, as he prepared for what was to come, he began scanning the crowd, searching for the right people to join him. Just moments before the countdown to the new year, another figure came into view, an acquaintance of the protagonist, standing with a group of friends in the bustling city center, ready to welcome the new year. Among them was a bald man who, in the midst of the festivities, wondered aloud about his future after graduation. He jokingly asked his friend if he should take up a job as a delivery driver. The man named Youngman, who would later be revealed as our protagonist's former tormentor, responded with a grin, declaring his ambition to become a mob boss. His friends were taken aback, unsure if Youngman was serious or just joking. But Youngman, with a carefree attitude, argued that life was too short not to live it to the fullest. As his friends pondered the wisdom of keeping their distance from Youngman after graduation, laughter broke out among them. They realized that associating with a would-be gangster might not be the best life choice. The bald man then teased Youngman, asking what would become of his personal shuttle after they graduated, a thinly veiled reference to the person Youngman had bullied throughout high school. The mention of this shuttle conjured an image in Youngman's mind, a downtrodden, defeated individual who had always been at his beck and call. Laughing, Youngman assured his friends that he had no intention of letting go of his shuttle, even after graduation. The group found this hilarious, and one of them mentioned that he had recently seen the shuttle nearby. At that exact moment, our protagonist was enveloped in a radiant light, regressing back to his 100th and possibly final attempt. As he reappeared, his expression was calm yet resolute, a stark contrast to the timid demeanor Youngman had come to expect. Youngman, now facing his former victim, was struck by the change. Something was different about the person standing before him. He seemed older, more confident, almost as if he had lived through countless lifetimes. The protagonist met Youngman's gaze, something he had never dared to do before. His newfound confidence unnerved Youngman, who found himself confused and irritated by this unexpected shift. Just as Youngman was about to react, his friends intervened, reminding him that there would be plenty of time to settle scores later. After all, today marked the start of a new year. Taking their words to heart, Youngman reluctantly backed down, deciding to let the incident slide for now. The group resumed their celebration, believing themselves to be grown-ups now, and exchanged wishes for a happy new year. Meanwhile, our protagonist silently prepared for the challenges that lay ahead, knowing that this time, he was determined to change his fate. A mysterious voice suddenly echoed through the air, interrupting the celebration. It was a voice that carried an otherworldly quality, filled with both amusement and disdain. The voice remarked on how peculiar humans were, daring to celebrate the new year without any understanding of what was truly happening around them. The crowd, startled, began searching frantically for the source of the voice. Then, from the midst of the confusion, a majestic figure emerged. She was adorned in a flowing white dress, and her magnificent wings shimmered with a radiant light. Her presence commanded attention, and her voice, though serene, carried an underlying menace. As she looked down upon the gathered people, a mocking smile played on her lips, finding their ignorance amusing. She commented on how humans were no better than caged monkeys, oblivious to their fate. The appearance of this celestial being captivated everyone in the city center. Her beauty was so overwhelming that most onlookers were entranced, unable to look away, everyone except the hero. He recognized her immediately and felt a deep-seated loathing rise within him. He had seen this exact scenario unfold 99 times before, and each time, his hatred for this moment only grew stronger. The angelic figure tried to stifle her laughter, but it spilled out nonetheless, laced with contempt. She sneered at the humans, calling them trash for being so easily mesmerized by her appearance. Her time was too valuable to waste on such meaningless admiration, she said. If they could see her so clearly, then surely they could hear her just as well, she mused with a smirk. One man in the crowd, fed up with her mockery, shouted at her, demanding to know who she was. He accused her of merely cosplaying as an angel. The hero remained silent, watching as the scene played out just as it had before. The angel's smile never wavered, but her demeanor darkened. Her eyes shifted to a deep, menacing red, and her voice dropped to a chilling whisper. In an instant, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. The man who had dared to challenge her was now nothing more than a memory. Yeo Min, one of the bystanders, could only gasp in horror. The angel, her sweet voice now gone, warned the crowd with a deadly seriousness. She declared that no one was to speak to her with such disrespect again. Humans, she said, were far too insignificant to question her or act with any semblance of arrogance in her presence. Those who dared would meet the same fate as the fool who had just perished. She went on, her tone laced with condescension, explaining that humanity had fallen to a pitifully low status. As she prepared to reveal the reason for their current predicament, the hero could only sigh, knowing what was to come. With a twisted smile, the angel announced that they were all now part of a game. From this moment forward, on the 1st of every month, their souls would be transported to another dimension to compete in 20 rounds of this cruel game. This, she declared, was the only way humans would now exist, playing her game, trapped in a cycle of survival and despair. For the next few days, they would be consumed by the tasks they were given, focusing entirely on completing each one. If they succeeded, they would be rewarded and returned to their normal lives. But confusion spread among the crowd as the angel spoke. Many believed that simply finishing the tasks would guarantee their survival, but the reality was far harsher. Even with the completion of every quest, survival was not guaranteed for everyone. The angel, noticing their naive thoughts, laughed softly, her voice tinged with amusement. She explained that only half of them would be allowed to live, reading the unspoken fears in their minds. Our hero remained calm and collected amidst the growing panic, his expression betraying no fear. It was clear to him that most of those around him were terrified, sensing that their lives were hanging by a thread. With a sinister smile, the angel assured them that not all would be taken, only a select few. The MC sighed inwardly, having heard these same words 99 times before. It was then revealed that only those between the ages of 15 and 29 would be forced to participate in this twisted game. As he listened, the hero couldn't help but reflect on how he never imagined he'd be trapped in this cycle, repeating the same game over and over. An older man in the crowd, realizing he was safe from the age requirement, smirked in relief. His smug reaction only fueled the anger of those who were not so lucky, escalating tensions. But before any conflict could erupt, Youngmin warned the crowd not to act rashly, lest they meet the same fate as the man who had defied the angel earlier. Spreading her wings wide, the angel announced that the time had come to begin. She revealed that approximately 1.9 billion people would be participating in this game. Her excitement grew as she declared that the explanation was over, and they would now move on to the actual game. A blinding white light enveloped everything, and the world around them vanished, leaving only the bodies of the participants. The hero was nowhere to be seen, and the angel explained that each participant had entered a space unique to them, a place visible only to the individual. She instructed them to shape their avatars in preparation for the soul transfer, much like customizing a character in a video game. This was a crucial moment, as they only had one chance to make their choices. As for the hero, he knew exactly what he would choose, having done this many times before. He began selecting the same appearance and traits he had used in his previous regressions. His in-game name, Black Scythe, just like before, the same ominous nickname. Moments after finishing the customization, the participants found themselves in a completely different setting, an open field where their avatars slowly came to life. The hero's chosen look was one he had favored time and again. His avatar now had jet black hair and piercing crimson eyes, with a taller, more imposing build than his real self. This form had become familiar to him, the embodiment of the hero he had tried to become in every cycle. This was his 100th appearance in the game. The body he now inhabited felt more like his true form, a mirror of the ones he had used in previous regressions. There was no need for him to acclimate, he knew this body as well as his own. As the avatars of the other players materialized into this new reality, many were visibly stunned by their own customizations. The MC noticed that several had designed their avatars to be strikingly attractive. But he knew all too well that this was one of the first mistakes a player could make. In this brutal world, the strong preyed on the weak, and drawing too much attention made one an easy target. The cost of such a mistake was high, death in the game meant death in real life. Just then, his gaze fixed on someone he had been anticipating, Hwang Youngmin, the high school bully who had tormented him relentlessly. As the Black Scythe, the MC felt a twinge of disappointment. He had hoped that Youngmin might show some growth in the game, but it seemed unlikely. The angel reappeared, greeting the players now that they had all been transported. She noticed how attached they seemed to their new appearances and mused aloud, her excitement barely contained, about how these pretty faces would fare when faced with true terror and despair. The humans from Seoul had been gathered here, a staggering 1.8 million participants, though some wondered why they only saw a fraction of that number. The angel laughed, delighting in the confusion. She revealed that the participants were spread across multiple spaces, with other angels overseeing different groups. Without further delay, the angel began to unveil more about the game. She explained that players could access a special kind of status window simply by imagining it. She gave an example, and before the MC appeared the familiar Black Scythe status window. But as he scanned it, he sighed in frustration. All his maxed out stats from his previous life had been wiped clean, leaving him at square one. Has everyone seen their status windows? The angel asked, her tone laced with mockery. A reminder of just how worthless you all are, she added with a smirk. The only way to survive and complete the 20 rounds, she told them, was to grow stronger. She then revealed the reward for completing this monumental task, a single wish, anything they desired. And, she added, they wouldn't have to pay any price for winning the game. The promise of such a reward set the players' minds racing, each contemplating their deepest desires. Sensing their eagerness, the angel's smile widened. To get things started, she announced, I've prepared a little gift for each of you today. When the players checked their inventories, they discovered something unexpected, a single item had been added. It was a random rune. The angel explained that this rune could be used only once and was usable even by those who were still at level 1. For now, it was the only item they would receive. The players quickly grasped that they could consume this rune just by thinking about the word use. The first to use the rune was Yongmin, who was visibly stunned by the outcome. The angel let out another chuckle as she noticed that several players seemed displeased with the effects of their runes. With a sly grin, she remarked that fate had dealt them these hands, and they had no choice but to accept them. As the players prepared for what was to come, the angel snapped her fingers after explaining the runes. Suddenly, particles of light began to materialize around them. A notification appeared before every player, detailing their first mission. As expected, the task seemed straightforward. Each player had to kill 100 goblins. However, the stakes were high. After this round, only half of the participants would be allowed to continue. Before long, the first goblin materialized. Some players, seeing the creature, remarked that it felt like they were inside a virtual reality game. But the angel quickly warned them not to get too comfortable. With a darkening expression and a menacing aura, she announced that she had summoned not just a few goblins, but a massive horde. The air filled with beams of light as more goblins appeared, and the initial calm on the players' faces quickly turned to panic. The angel declared that 10,000 humans would face off against 50,000 goblins in a brutal fight to the death. As the goblin horde surged forward, moving with terrifying speed, many players were paralyzed with fear, unsure how to react. Others began to retreat, their footsteps echoing in the tense silence. But not Black Scythe. With a determined expression, he charged headlong into the fray, showing no trace of fear. The players behind him watched in disbelief, wondering what he could possibly be thinking. The goblins were heavily armed and dangerous, yet Black Scythe's calm demeanor gave way to a murderous intensity as the monsters drew nearer. He lunged at the closest goblin, delivering a powerful kick that sent the creature flying several meters away. Black Scythe knew the importance of making a strong first impression, especially in a new group. He wanted to burn the image of his strength into the minds of those around him, and taking down the first goblin was the perfect way to do it. With the goblin down, he quickly snatched the dagger from its hand, knowing there was something even more important he needed to acquire. In his mind, it was crucial to demonstrate his power early on, to keep the other players from underestimating him or becoming a nuisance. The angel overseeing their group watched with growing interest, clearly amused by Black Scythe's display of skill. Realizing that all eyes were on him, Black Scythe knew he had to keep up the act. In a flash, he slashed through 2 more goblins that rushed him, leaving the onlookers in awe of his prowess. Other players began to wonder if Black Scythe was some kind of secret agent. His impressive nickname only added to their curiosity. They figured that perhaps the goblins were just the weakest enemies, given how easily Black Scythe had taken them down. A few of the more confident players even started to believe they could handle these monsters just as effortlessly. However, their overconfidence was short-lived. One player, who had let his guard down, was caught off guard by a goblin. The so-called weakest monster took him down with a single blow, shattering any illusions of an easy victory. Reality set in hard, and the group quickly realized that they were in serious danger. Panic spread as they witnessed the goblin killing the player, and soon, everyone was fleeing for their lives. Black Scythe observed the chaos unfolding around him. He recognized this as one of the many brutal lessons of the game, what he called the greetings of Inferno. By now, it was clear to everyone that this was no mere game. Survival had become the only thing on their minds. The humans who once sat comfortably at the top of the food chain were now the hunted. As panic set in, people began to run aimlessly, driven by the instinct to survive. Black Scythe recalled making the same mistake during his first playthrough, only realizing the harsh truth after his second regression: no matter how fast one ran, there was no escape from this dimension. One woman, in particular, came to a halt as she realized she was trapped by an invisible barrier, preventing any escape from the goblins. This situation served as a stark wake-up call for the modern humans, whose lives had been made easy by technology. The natural instinct to kill for survival had long been dormant in most of them, making it difficult for some to take their first life in the game. But hesitation could be deadly, as any moment of doubt could give the monsters the opening they needed to strike back. As the battle continued, some players managed to push past their limits, but the situation remained grim. The angel overseeing the scene found it all highly amusing. She remarked that despite goblins being only slightly larger than children, the players were struggling to defeat them, especially since the goblins attacked in groups and wielded daggers. Yet, amidst the chaos, one person caught the angel's attention: Black Scythe. She couldn't understand why this human was so different from the others. When she checked his progress, she discovered that he had already slain 70 goblins. The angel grew irritated, as the system only allowed her to see the number of goblins he had killed and nothing more. But she decided to brush it off, feeling that someone of her noble stature had no reason to concern herself with mere mortals. The battle raged on, and each time a player defeated a goblin, they earned experience points and gold, which would eventually help them level up. As for Black Scythe, his kill count had now reached 75, and he continued to press forward with relentless determination. Black Scythe continued to display his remarkable skills, effortlessly dodging every weapon the goblins hurled at him. A new wave of goblins rushed toward him, but with swift and powerful strikes, he dispatched each one with lethal precision. The blood of the monsters stained his hands, causing some of the goblins to hesitate and retreat from his relentless onslaught. However, Black Scythe showed no mercy, cutting down his foes with a single blow each time. His eyes grew darker and more dangerous as he hunted for more goblins to slay. Noticing that the goblins were starting to avoid him, he decided to take a momentary break, knowing that no one was currently challenging him. He checked his status window and saw that he had reached level 4, earning 6 extra stat points. Each level up granted him 2 additional stat points, which he allocated entirely to agility. This decision was strategic. Agility would enhance his speed, improve his attack rate, and increase his ability to dodge enemy strikes. In the early stages, agility was crucial. Black Scythe realized that with his rapid progress, the angel would undoubtedly take notice of him soon. He began to strategize the best way to complete the first mission. Suddenly, a circling dagger struck one of the goblins. Turning his attention back to the goblins, Black Scythe taunted them, asking if they really intended to stop attacking him. Despite his provocation, the goblins remained where they were, unimpressed. Sighing in frustration, Black Scythe knew he had no choice but to press on. In a flash, he vanished from his spot and reappeared across the group of goblins, retrieving the dagger he had thrown. The goblins took several seconds to comprehend what had just happened. But before they could react, Black Scythe unleashed a devastating round slash, cutting the entire group in half. With the goblins defeated, he leveled up again, and the system notified him that he had fulfilled the requirements for the first mission. A scythe of dark light enveloped him, signaling the completion of the task. Black Scythe mused that the first round had always been like this, straightforward but demanding. He knew he needed to push himself just a bit more to catch the angel's attention. The system congratulated him for being the first person to finish the quest in their designated zone and for securing the top spot in all zones. It took him a total of 10 minutes and 21 seconds to complete the task. With a satisfied grin, he relished in the achievement of securing rank 1 yet again. The significance of this accomplishment would become evident soon, as the top 3 players in each mission were awarded special prizes. For finishing first in his designated zone, he received a rare weapon selection coupon, the lowest rank of its kind. Moreover, for ranking first across all zones, he was granted a unique reward selection box, items that would undoubtedly provide a significant edge over the other players. Black Scythe decided to use the weapon coupon first. The system presented him with a list of rare weapons to choose from. He couldn't help but feel a bit humiliated at the thought of returning to these lower-grade weapons, yet he was still grateful to have them at the start. After a moment of consideration, he chose the stiletto, a dagger known to be the best for beginners. It boasted an additional agility stat and had an attack power of 15. With his new weapon in hand, he discarded the dagger he had taken from the goblins, deciding to save his other reward for later. Meanwhile, as Black Scythe reviewed his rewards, the goblins continued their relentless pursuit of the other players. When he checked his status window again, something unusual caught his eye. The title, Last Time Regressor, appeared, a title he had never encountered in his previous 99 attempts. Reflecting on this, he realized that the rune he had used earlier was the rune of regression, the very same rune he had received in his first attempt. This rune was what had brought him this far, though it vanished immediately after he consumed it. The only difference was the error that now appeared with the rune. Black Scythe had anticipated this outcome, knowing he couldn't keep rewinding time indefinitely. The rune confirmed that this was indeed his 100th regression, which was what triggered the Last Time Regressor title. Titles in this game were considered superior to runes, and the Last Time Regressor could only be obtained after a person's 100th regression. This title allowed him to spend a minute in soul form, during which he could resurrect with 30% of his health restored, a rare ability, typically only associated with priests. Black Scythe pondered the potential of this new title, realizing it could be crucial in his quest to win the game this time. Recognizing its value, he decided to keep the title hidden, setting it to private so that no other players or entities could see it. Expecting that other players who completed the mission would be arriving soon, he held out his hands, curious about their condition. His thoughts drifted to Youngmin, and as he scanned the area, he was relieved to see the guy still holding on, managing to survive the ordeal. Black Scythe anticipated that Youngmin would likely survive this round as well. A few moments later, golden lights began to illuminate the entire area. The angel continued to watch with a sly grin, realizing why she found the battlefield a bit dull. As more players managed to kill 100 goblins, the overall goblin population had actually decreased, diminishing the thrill of facing a horde of monsters. Acknowledging her mistake, the angel apologized, assuring everyone that she would restore the excitement. Her mocking words sent shivers down the spines of the remaining survivors, who understood the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, the bodies of fallen players began to vanish, which caught the attention of those still alive. They wondered why this was happening, and their concerns grew as another brilliant light appeared. This time, the sight of golden light offered no comfort, only dread. A new wave of goblins had been summoned, charging toward the weary players. Fear was etched on their faces as they faced this fresh onslaught, already exhausted from the previous battle. The angel, her face twisted with madness, gleefully informed them that she had summoned an additional 50,000 goblins to keep the feast going. With no other choice, the players braced themselves for the fight, and the once peaceful fields quickly descended into chaos. The goblins fought with relentless ferocity, while the players, driven by sheer will, managed to hang on. As time passed, more players completed the mission. Yongmin was among them, though he resorted to using others as shields to defend himself from the goblins' attacks, a desperate measure for desperate times. Eventually, only 1,000 participants remained. Black Scythe, however, simply sat with his eyes closed, bored by the scene. Having played this game 100 times, he had grown numb to the sight of death. Former participants like him were forbidden from assisting those still struggling to complete the mission, and the angel continued to watch the carnage as if it were mere entertainment. After a while, Black Scythe reopened his eyes, prompted by the notification that all 5,143 participants had completed the mission. Although these survivors had managed to stay alive, they had failed to eliminate 1,000 goblins. As they looked around in confusion, they wondered where all the monsters had gone. As the angel declared the mission over, she captured everyone's attention. With a voice full of mock sympathy, she addressed those who had failed, explaining that their fates were simply a matter of the game's rules. Their bodies began to fade, signaling their inevitable demise. Some, realizing they were only a few goblins away from survival, pleaded desperately for another chance. But their cries fell on deaf ears. The angel, now with a satisfied smile, clapped her hands and congratulated the survivors, urging them to be thankful for making it through the first round. She laughed as she praised the remaining humans, wishing them luck on their upcoming challenges. Before the players were sent away, the results of the mission were displayed. Black Scythe, as expected, had claimed the top spot. Each of the other players was also identified by unique nicknames. The system announced that Black Scythe's victory had earned him 1,000 gold, in addition to his previous rewards. He was informed that once he reached level 10, he could use the gold to purchase valuable items. As he received his gold, Black Scythe noticed more players avoiding eye contact with him, exactly as he had intended. His goal was to establish himself as the strongest, and he had succeeded. The angel, somewhat surprised, commented that she never expected the top-ranked player to be within her own domain. She then turned to Black Scythe, curiosity in her eyes, and asked him how he had become so powerful, wondering if he had been granted a particularly strong rune. However, before she could press further, she realized her mistake and cut herself off. Amused, Black Scythe teased her, suggesting she could check his status window to see his rune for herself. The angel, trying to maintain her composure, pretended that she could indeed see his rune. But only Black Scythe knew that she was bluffing. To further unsettle her, Black Scythe stepped closer and made a bold request. The angel's demeanor became increasingly unstable as she listened, unaware that this man had already spent 99 lifetimes in this exact scenario. With a calm but firm tone, Black Scythe expressed his dissatisfaction with the reward he had received for finishing first. He accused the angel of being stingy, a statement that shocked those around him. They couldn't believe someone would dare to demand more from such a ruthless entity. As expected, the angel's mood darkened, and she questioned him sharply about his audacity. But Black Scythe remained unfazed, repeating his request without hesitation. His unwavering confidence left the others in awe, realizing that this was no ordinary player. He desired greater rewards. The angel's irritation with Black Scythe's audacity was growing, but they locked eyes in a tense standoff. In the back of everyone's minds, unease was creeping in. The angel wondered if his victory in the mission had made this human arrogant enough to think he could look down on her. The notion that a mere human would dare to make demands of her was incomprehensible. Raising her hand, she prepared to strike him down, but hesitated as she realized she had already used that power and couldn't kill him. As she glared at Black Scythe, another idea occurred to her, something that should be enough to deal with him. She echoed his demands, slowly moving towards him. For the first time, she descended to walk on the earth, a rare gesture for someone of her stature. She clarified that normally, such requests would be rejected outright, but she hinted that she might consider it, privately. This offer meant they would speak away from the others, who were left watching in awe. Some of the remaining players admired Black Scythe as they moved away, intrigued by what kind of rewards he might receive next. Among them was Youngmin, who watched MC's back with a puzzled expression, unsure of what he was missing. Black Scythe noticed the glance and returned it, leaving Youngmin more confused than before. With a slight smile, Black Scythe continued walking. By now, they had distanced themselves from the other players, venturing deep into the forest. The angel, growing impatient, ordered Black Scythe to come closer. Inwardly, she mocked humanity, thinking they needed to be punished to understand their place. She considered them foolish and greedy, and as she walked, she rationalized that the rewards were beyond her control. However, she was determined to discipline Black Scythe for what she saw as his excessive greed. She led him to a secluded spot behind a large rock, an area where the system couldn't track them. Once they arrived, her true intent surfaced: she wanted to kill him. She knew there would be consequences if the authorities discovered she had killed a player for personal reasons, but her irritation overrode her caution. The angel had planned this meticulously, ensuring there would be no witnesses to what she was about to do, believing it to be the perfect plan. The angel's grin twisted into a maniacal smile, convinced that this human should have just stayed silent. She turned to face Black Scythe, asking what kind of rewards he was hoping to receive. But before she could react, she was met with a swift fist aimed directly at her face. The punch landed with a satisfying impact. In that moment, the so-called holy being was reduced to something far less formidable. Her expression darkened as she realized that she wasn't as invincible as she believed. Seeing the golden blood oozing from her wound, she was shocked that anyone dared to strike her. She quickly turned to flee, but when she looked back, Black Scythe had vanished from sight. Her heart raced in panic. Suddenly, she felt a sharp tug as Black Scythe reappeared and grabbed one of her wings. Fear surged through her as she realized what was coming. She cried out, demanding to know what he planned to do and begging him to stop. But Black Scythe was merciless. He snapped the wing as if it were nothing, showing no concern for her pleas. The angel screamed in agony, nearly losing consciousness as golden blood sprayed from the torn wing. Our protagonist looked at her coldly, telling her to stop whining. He then seized her other wing, ripping it apart with the same ruthless efficiency. As the final wing was destroyed, Black Scythe remarked that she wouldn't be able to run anymore. He then asked her if she was in pain. Her answer was an obvious yes. She felt as if she had lost a part of herself. Black Scythe then revealed that if her plan had succeeded, she would have been the one asking these questions, laughing at his suffering. The angel, desperate, tried to deny his accusations, insisting that he had lost his mind. But Black Scythe exposed a hidden dagger that had been concealed beneath her wings, confirming her true intentions. The angel fell silent, knowing she had been caught. Still, she attempted to talk her way out of the situation, but Black Scythe simply smiled and told her that her face had already betrayed her lies. He then called her by the name Beryl, which caught her off guard. She stared at him in confusion, asking how he knew her name. But Black Scythe merely smirked, dismissing her question. He pulled out his newly acquired dagger from his inventory, and Beryl's face twisted in panic. Her eyes widened as she demanded to know why he'd drawn his weapon. Desperation laced her voice as she threatened to obliterate him with a snap of her fingers, claiming she could end him in an instant. However, Black Scythe knew better. He was well aware that Beryl had already expended her power earlier, rendering her threat empty. This knowledge bolstered his confidence, leaving Beryl with no options. Clenching her teeth in frustration, she tried one last time to bargain for her life. She warned him that if he killed her, other angels would hunt him down for revenge. But Black Scythe wasn't fooled. He knew that angels were self-centered and indifferent to the fate of others, even their own kind. Realizing her threats were useless, Beryl switched tactics, pleading for her life. She insisted that sparing her wouldn't cost him anything, and that killing her wouldn't bring him any real benefit. She even tried to tempt him with the promise of valuable information that could help him succeed in future missions. But Black Scythe had already lived through this scenario 99 times before. He knew all the tricks and traps by heart. If he really needed information, he could have just tortured it out of her. Without hesitation, Black Scythe drove the dagger into Beryl's chest. The angel gasped in shock, realizing too late that she had underestimated her opponent. As the dagger was pulled from her chest, she collapsed to the ground, lifeless. A system notification flashed before Black Scythe's eyes, congratulating him for being the first player to defeat an angel. The title Angel Slayer was bestowed upon him, and 2 items materialized in his hands. One of these items was a vial labeled Angel's Blood, while the other was a crimson rune known as the Rune of the Slaughterer. Without wasting a moment, Black Scythe activated the rune, feeling its power etch itself into his body. The Angel Slayer title doubled all his stats, a reward that far exceeded his expectations. He recalled that during his 13th regression, he had first discovered the rewards for killing angels, knowledge that had served him well. The Rune of the Slaughterer had a unique effect. With each kill, it would boost all his stats by 1%, up to a maximum of 100%. As he surveyed his newfound gains, Black Scythe couldn't help but grin. These rewards were as good as an entire treasure trove. He knew that the other angels would be stunned when they learned he had claimed yet another powerful rune. But then, his expression darkened as he remembered there was one more reason he had killed Beryl, a reason that lay glowing faintly on the ground. It was the vial of Angel's Blood, a rare consumable that held the potential to transform its user into a Reaper. The only requirement was reaching level 10, the threshold at which players could choose their class in this deadly game. There are 30 different classes available to players, and changing classes is a straightforward process. All a player needs to do is acquire a class change item, typically obtained naturally through hunting or meeting simple requirements. However, special classes, which are available only under specific circumstances and to a single player, are exceptions to this rule. The Angel's Blood, which transforms a player into a Reaper, is a prime example of such a special class. Special classes operate on a completely different level from standard ones, offering extra stats, unique progression runes, skill combinations, and numerous other benefits. Although the first mission was still incomplete, Black Scythe felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that he had secured these powerful rewards. He opened his status window using the special prize he received for being ranked first in his zone. Among the options available, he only needed to choose the one that would enable him to reach level 10 as quickly as possible, allowing him to switch classes. The experience buff, which offered triple experience points, was the clear choice. This bonus would automatically take effect in the second mission. Things were finally falling into place for him. As Black Scythe glanced down at the fallen angel, he realized that this might be his last chance to win the game. He was prepared to do whatever it took to grow stronger and achieve his goal. The first round of the mission finally concluded after a brief delay. Across all regions, around 900 million survivors remained, with roughly 5,000 in Black Scythe's zone. The system then announced that the survivors would be returned to their original bodies in another dimension. The next mission was scheduled for February 1, 2023. When Youngmin woke up, he gasped for breath, instantly looking around in confusion. He had fallen asleep during the New Year's Bell event in the middle of the city and had just experienced what felt like an extremely vivid dream. His expression grew puzzled as he tried to process what had happened. The people around him were waking up as well, all of them complaining of body and head pains. They quickly realized that everyone had shared the same dream, which left them feeling unnerved and confused. As they discussed their experiences, it became clear that this was not merely a dream. More and more people began to realize this unsettling fact, leading them to wonder if they would be transported back to another dimension on the 1st of February. However, some also noticed that not everyone around them was waking up. Youngmin's friend, Taeshik, remained still, unresponsive. The sight of their unmoving friend sent a chill through the group, making them question what they had really experienced and what was yet to come. The man approached his friend, calling out his name. When Taeshik's face finally came into view, it was already pale, the unmistakable sign of death etched upon it. At that moment, denial set in among the group. They couldn't accept what they were seeing. But as the realization sank in, they began to tremble uncontrollably. One of them checked Taeshik for a pulse and confirmed that he wasn't breathing. Youngmin was shocked, unable to process the loss. The thought struck them that perhaps Taeshik hadn't survived the goblin mission. As the bald man scanned the area, he noticed more people who hadn't woken up. The horrifying truth dawned on them: everyone lying on the ground was now a corpse. Fear gripped the group as they realized that only half of them had made it through the assault. Youngmin was visibly shaken, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he grappled with the surreal situation. He understood that, from now on, everyone would be equal, regardless of their social standing or background. The game had erased the distinctions that once defined their lives, leaving no room for complaints about life's unfairness. Youngmin tried to comfort his friends, telling them that their only task was to survive each mission. He reasoned that since they had all gone through the same ordeal, there was no need to feel so disturbed by it. His friends, however, thought he was out of his mind, finding his words bizarre and unsettling. The bald man sighed, explaining that Youngmin seemed unbothered because he was now living out his dream of being a thug, while the others had different aspirations. Despite the bald man's words, Youngmin's mind was elsewhere. He was scanning the crowd, looking for someone in particular, MC, his errand boy. He was certain the boy had been standing near them earlier, but now he was nowhere to be found. This led Youngmin to suspect that the errand boy hadn't survived the mission. He smirked, thinking it was only fitting since the boy had always been too weak to take on 100 goblins. But then something caught his attention. Youngmin noticed a man nearby, carrying strange gear slung over his shoulder. He wondered where on earth the man had gotten those gaudy clothes and what the deal was with him. As the thought crossed his mind, he swallowed hard. Youngmin decided to try using the status window, and to his amazement, it appeared before him just like it had in the game. He discovered that he had reached level 5, with all his stat points allocated to strength. The realization that he could access this feature outside of the game was mind-blowing. After hearing him mention it, his friends attempted to access their own status windows as well. Their faces reflected the same shock and disbelief, just like everyone else who had made it through the mission. They were beginning to understand that these bizarre phenomena could happen in real life too. To test his newfound strength, Youngmin picked up a stone from the ground and, with a simple clench of his fist, crushed the solid rock into dust. The sheer power he now possessed was thrilling, almost surreal, as if he were dreaming. But soon, his fascination with this power began to give way to something darker, an intoxicating sense of superiority. "This is too awesome," he muttered to himself. News outlets across Korea quickly caught wind of the strange events. Reports flooded in about over 10,000 civilians mysteriously collapsing simultaneously. A video clip went viral, showing the moment when the angelic being appeared in the city. It also captured the horrifying instant when a man's head suddenly exploded without warning. As the footage continued, the angel was seen reaching out to embrace bystanders, who then seemed to fall asleep on the spot. According to police reports, most of the collapsed individuals were between 15 and 29 years old. And it wasn't just Korea, this phenomenon was global. Social media was abuzz with panic and speculation. People who hadn't been part of the game were confused and scared, with many demanding answers. Some skeptics dismissed the footage as computer-generated imagery, but there was one person who knew the truth: the events that had just transpired were only the beginning. The MC understood that more was coming, and that the world was about to change forever. This was just the first mission. Soon, death would become a regular occurrence. In just one night, 11% of the population had perished. As he made his way home, the MC realized that the real danger lay ahead. Those who had survived the mission were now known as players, and authorities were scrambling to understand the cause of this phenomenon. What made it even more alarming was that the players' in-game abilities had transferred to the real world. Fortunately, none of the players had yet reached a level where they could drastically alter reality. But as time went on, some of them would grow stronger, potentially becoming transcendent beings. No amount of advanced weaponry would be able to stand against these human weapons. As for the MC, he had no intention of letting the world descend into chaos. He knew that if things continued on this path, the Earth wouldn't last beyond the 20th cycle. His mind was set: he needed to control the players, using overwhelming force if necessary. By the time he reached his 99th attempt, he had already amassed the immense power required to do so. However, the reason Ryu Min failed in his previous attempts was that he fought every battle alone. The final challenge required the help of 4 additional players to succeed. With a renewed sense of determination, he began to consider potential allies, individuals who might prove invaluable in the coming trials. Although he had a few candidates in mind, Ryu Min knew that the timing wasn't right to act. The game had only just begun, and there were more immediate concerns that required his attention. It's also important to note that in this reality, our protagonist goes by the name Ryu Min, and from this point on, that's how we'll refer to him. With his thoughts in order, Ryu Min headed toward his apartment complex. Once there, he unlocked the door to his unit and entered one of the rooms. The first thing that caught his eye was an empty cup of ramen sitting on the table. Shaking his head, he muttered to himself about how someone had eaten that unhealthy food again. Ryu Min walked over to another door and quietly peeked inside. There, he saw a young man who bore a striking resemblance to him, fast asleep. The only noticeable difference between them was their hair. Despite being away from home for so long, Ryu Min smiled softly, feeling a sense of relief that his younger brother was resting peacefully. The sleeping figure was Ruan, Ryu Min's younger brother, who was about to start his 3rd year of middle school. Their family had once been ordinary, but everything changed after their parents died in a car accident. Since then, it had been just the two of them, with Ryu Min taking on the role of guardian at a young age. As Ryu Min looked at Ruan, he noticed the bruises and bandages on his brother's body, something he had been oblivious to before his regression. Determined to change things, Ryu Min turned on the lights, gently waking his brother. "Time to get up," Ryu Min said, greeting him with a smile. Ruan groggily checked his phone and saw that it was only 6 in the morning. He tried to burrow back under the covers, but Ryu Min wasn't having it. He pulled the mattress from beneath his brother, making it clear that going back to sleep wasn't an option. "I'll explain everything on the way, but we don't have much time," Ryu Min said firmly. Still half asleep, Ruan asked his brother why all this was happening. But as he heard the serious tone in Ryu Min's voice, his expression shifted to one of concern. This wasn't the carefree older brother he knew. The change in Ryu Min's demeanor was unsettling. Ruan only knew that his brother had gone out to see the New Year's bells ring in the city. "Did something happen?" he asked, sensing that whatever had occurred was far more serious than he could have imagined. Ryu Min told Ruan to head outside first, promising to explain everything as they walked. After a short while, the two were strolling down the street, with Ruan casting a concerned glance at his brother. It was rare to see his older brother so serious, and Ruan couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Breaking the silence, Ryu Min began to speak. "No one really knows what's happening in the world right now," he said, his tone somber. This only heightened Ruan's curiosity, prompting him to ask if something had occurred while he was asleep. Instead of answering directly, Ryu Min instructed him to check the top trending searches on his phone. Ruan quickly pulled out his phone, following his brother's suggestion. As he read through the articles, he saw shocking reports about people being taken to another world by a mysterious angelic figure. However, Ryu Min corrected him. Their souls were taken, he clarified. Ruan was stunned to learn that his brother had been one of the people taken, and even more shocked to find out that the only reason Ryu Min had survived was because he had killed 100 goblins. Worried, Ruan started to ask how his brother was doing, but Ryu Min cut him off, telling him not to worry. "But how can I not worry about you?" Ruan exclaimed, his voice filled with emotion. Since their parents had died, his brother was all he had left. Ryu Min had taken on the role of caregiver, shouldering the responsibility for both of them even while they were still grieving. To Ruan, his older brother had always been a source of strength, mentally and emotionally. But the idea that Ryu Min had killed 100 goblins seemed impossible. How could the brother he knew be capable of such a thing? Sensing his brother's doubts, Ryu Min interrupted his thoughts. He explained that the game they were thrust into had a system of stats that could enhance a person's abilities. "That's how I gained the strength I needed to complete the mission," he said. Ryu Min then added that Ruan would understand everything once he saw what Ryu Min could do later. Despite Ryu Min's assurances, Ruan couldn't shake the concern that gnawed at him. The world had changed, and so had his brother. But how much, he wondered, had Ryu Min truly changed? Ruan suddenly stopped in his tracks, refusing to take another step until Ryu Min revealed where they were heading. His voice tinged with desperation, he insisted on knowing their destination before going any further. As he stood there, the bruises hidden beneath his bandages became more visible, a stark reminder of his recent struggles. Ryu Min's expression remained blank as he recalled a painful memory from the past. After a brief pause, he spoke a name, Bang Taeju. The mention of this name sent a jolt of fear through Ruan, his eyes widening in shock. He hadn't expected his brother to know about Bang Taeju, the notorious bully in his class who had been tormenting him. Turning to face his younger brother, Ryu Min calmly stated that they were heading to Bang Taeju's hideout. It was the place where the head delinquent of Ruan's class was hiding out, and it was also where Ryu Min had finally admitted to himself that he knew Ruan was being bullied. Ruan's alarm grew. He had gone to great lengths to keep this secret from his brother, hoping to shield him from further stress during an already difficult time. But Ryu Min wasn't ignorant of the situation. He had been carrying the guilt of not knowing sooner, of being too absorbed in his own struggles, balancing school, work, and the pressures of life. It wasn't until after his first battle with the goblins that he learned the truth. That day, he had slept for hours, exhausted from the fight, while Ruan slipped out of the house. When Ryu Min finally awoke, he found his phone flooded with missed calls. Reluctantly, he answered, and the voice on the other end told him to rush to the hospital. The shock hit him hard when he learned that Ruan had been involved in an incident. Though his brother survived the brutal beating at the hands of Taeju, he was left severely injured, and when he returned home, he was almost blind. That day, Ryu Min was consumed with guilt, blaming himself for being too weak and helpless to protect the only family he had left. But since his regression, he had vowed to change Ruan's fate, to ensure that in every timeline, his brother would be safe. He swore that no one would ever harm Ruan again. Meanwhile, in an abandoned factory near their neighborhood, a different scene was unfolding. A blonde-haired thug was berating three trembling individuals in front of him. They had failed to bring him the $200,001 he had demanded from each of them, and the tension in the air was palpable as they awaited their punishment. The battered trio lacked the strength to voice their excuses, their bodies racked with pain from the beating. Taeju, undeterred, continued his assault, showing no signs of letting up. A few others stood by, simply watching as their friend taught a lesson. They knew Taeju's reputation all too well. He was notorious for his ruthlessness. Even the older students at school were wary of crossing him, and they had no desire to provoke his wrath. These guys are worthless, Taeju sneered, frustrated by their failure to meet his demands. He had been counting on the money to buy the motorcycle he had been eyeing for weeks. Turning his attention to the others, he demanded to know if they had any ideas on how to come up with the cash. The three standing by exchanged nervous glances, racking their brains for a solution. But thinking of a quick and easy way to make money wasn't simple, and they struggled to come up with anything worthwhile. Then, one of them had a sudden idea. He suggested Taeju try hitting up his personal errand boy, Ryuan, for some cash. Taeju's face lit up at the mention of the tall, curly-haired boy. He had already been planning to contact Ryuan, figuring he could squeeze some money out of him while spending the new year together. The others chuckled, encouraging Taeju to just rob Ryuan outright. But Taeju shook his head, revealing that Ryuan was practically penniless. Even if he beat him up, Ryuan wouldn't be able to bring him much money. His house looks like it's about to fall apart, Taeju added, his voice dripping with disdain. Hearing this, the others felt a twinge of pity for Ryuan. They knew he had no parents and that he lived with his older brother, the only family he had left. But their thoughts were interrupted when Taeju suddenly stopped talking, his gaze fixed on something in the distance. Ryuan and Ryu-min had finally arrived at the abandoned warehouse. Seeing Ryuan, Taeju's initial confidence returned, thinking that with Ryuan around, there was nothing to worry about. A sly smile spread across his face as he approached Ryuan, saying, "We were just talking about you." But the moment he noticed Ryu-min standing beside Ryuan, Taeju's demeanor shifted. He tried to intimidate Ryuan, but the presence of Ryu-min made him falter. Apologizing quickly, he turned to Ryu-min, eyeing him with suspicion. Something about Ryu-min's face bothered him, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Taeju turned to Ryuan, his gaze sharp, and asked who the newcomer was. Ryuan hesitated, fear evident in his eyes, and couldn't muster a reply. Sensing his brother's discomfort, Ryu-min stepped in, introducing himself as Ryuan's elder brother. Taeju's expression darkened at the revelation, clearly annoyed. He had made it very clear to Ryuan that betrayal wouldn't be tolerated, and now it seemed like Ryuan had brought someone else into their business. Irritated, Taeju warned Ryu-min that he was about to teach him a lesson as well. He gave a nod to one of his henchmen, signaling them to move in. The three thugs approached Ryu-min, smirking as they sized him up. One of them even mocked Ryu-min for being shorter than his younger brother. But their laughter quickly died down when the first thug got close enough and was met with a powerful punch from Ryu-min. The thug dropped instantly, leaving his companions in shock. One of the others rushed forward, eager to avenge his fallen friend. But before he could even launch an attack, Ryu-min countered with a precise strike, sending the thug flying into a stack of metal drums. The final thug, undeterred, also tried his luck, only to be floored by a swift blow to the face. Now, all three of Taeju's lackeys were sprawled on the ground, struggling to get up. Despite the situation, Taeju maintained his menacing grin. He muttered that the display was impressive, assuming Ryu-min had picked up some boxing skills. However, he doubted those skills would be enough to take him down. Taeju moved closer, sarcastically complimenting Ryu-min on his boxing techniques, but also pointed out that he seemed to forget how crucial physical strength was in a fight. Ryu-min only smiled, knowing Taeju was still clueless about the recent global changes. Taeju, sensing something off, asked what Ryu-min found so amusing. But when Ryu-min just chuckled dismissively, Taeju's anger flared. Frustrated by the lack of respect, Taeju lunged at Ryu-min, throwing a punch. Unfortunately for Taeju, his standard attacks were no match for Ryu-min, who had gained abilities far beyond those of an ordinary person. Taeju kept swinging, his frustration mounting as none of his punches connected. The more he tried, the angrier he became, realizing he was completely outmatched. Taeju's vision was starting to blur from exhaustion, and with each swing, he missed his target entirely. He couldn't understand why his punches weren't landing. Meanwhile, Ryu-min calmly gathered a blue aura around his fist, remarking that if Taeju had been paying attention to the news, he wouldn't have dared to challenge him. Before Taeju could react, Ryu-min's fist connected with his face, sending the bulky man stumbling back several meters. Despite his size, Taeju managed to stay on his feet, though it was clear the hit had rattled him. Furious, he charged at Ryu Min, intent on landing a counterattack, but his fist found only empty air. Confused, Taeju scanned the area, only to be blindsided by another powerful punch that lit up the side of his face. Unable to comprehend what was happening, Taeju stubbornly insisted that Ryu Min was no match for him, even as he spat out blood and felt a tooth come loose. Enraged, he screamed that he would make sure Ryu Min paid with his life. He swung again, but Ryu Min effortlessly dodged, grabbing Taeju's arm and twisting it aside, throwing him off balance and leaving him open to another barrage of blows. The other guys, who had been beaten down by Taeju earlier, watched in disbelief as their leader was systematically dismantled. Taeju couldn't help but notice the self-satisfied expression on Ryu Min's face, and it only fueled his desire to land at least one solid hit. Desperate, he lunged at Ryu Min again, but before he could connect, a powerful kick sent him flying into a nearby wall. Taeju was done. He didn't have the stamina to continue, nor could he withstand the relentless attacks any longer. As he struggled to get back up, Ryu Min taunted him, raising an eyebrow and asking if Taeju was mad at him. In that moment, Ryu Min was reminded of the day his younger brother had gone blind, a memory that haunted him through every regression. It was a moment that solidified his resolve, and he wasn't about to let anyone, especially not someone like Taeju, stand in his way. As the situation intensified, the hefty figure pleaded with Ryu Min to stay away, shielding his neck from what he feared would be another brutal kick. However, when Ryu Min simply grasped his hand instead of striking, Taeju was momentarily confused. Despite the fear evident in Taeju's eyes, Ryu Min grinned, his expression cold and unforgiving. With a chilling calmness, Ryu Min reminded Taeju why he should never have meddled with his younger brother. The realization hit like a wave of pain, causing Taeju to cry out in agony. His fingers, now broken, throbbed with an intensity that took a few seconds to fully register in his mind. As Taeju continued to wail, clutching his shattered fingers, Ryu Min mercilessly grabbed his other hand. Fear overtook Taeju as he frantically pleaded for mercy, but his cries only intensified as more of his fingers were broken. The sight was too much for Taeju's lackeys, who quickly fled, knowing that staying would only put them in greater danger. Even Ryu Min's younger brother, Ro-won, couldn't bear to watch what was happening and turned away. Ryu Min delivered one final warning to Taeju, making it clear that messing with his younger brother would never be tolerated again. For Taeju, this punishment was more than enough to make him reconsider every choice he had made in his life up to that point. The eerie smile that lingered on Ryu Min's face as he confirmed the broken fingers sent a shiver down Taeju's spine. But Ryu Min wasn't done. He grabbed Taeju's other arm and snapped it as well, ensuring there would be no thoughts of revenge. A scream echoed through the neighborhood, marking the end of the brutal encounter. With the ordeal over, the two brothers walked away as if nothing had happened. Ro-won, still in shock, asked how his older brother had managed to do all of that. He speculated that Ryu Min might have learned martial arts or something similar. But Ryu Min dismissed the idea, instead attributing his abilities to his transformation into a player. He explained that players could use their stats to enhance their real-world skills, and to prove it, Ro-won tried to summon the weapon he had received in a previous round. Slowly, a brilliant golden light began to form, and to his surprise, a dark, sharp dagger appeared. Ro-won stared in disbelief before grinning at the realization that this was indeed possible. Ryu Min then explained that all players could summon their weapons in this way. It was at that moment that Ro-won understood the true source of his brother's incredible speed. Dodging all those attacks had been effortless because Ryu Min's dexterity stat was around 11, a number far above the average person's 3, and even higher than an athlete's 10. When Ro-won asked what would happen if his brother leveled up further, Ryu Min pretended to be clueless, brushing it off as if he was still far from that stage. In reality, he was deliberately withholding information, unwilling to reveal the truth due to the traumatic experiences of his past life. During his 11th regression, Ryu Min had confessed to Ro-won that he was a regressor, but that revelation had put his younger brother in grave danger. Ro-won was kidnapped by other players who sought to use him as leverage against Ryu Min. Though Ryu Min had managed to save him at that time, he vowed never to let Ro-won endure such trauma again. As Ro-won studied his brother, he realized that he needed to be better prepared to protect him from other players. To lighten the mood, he suggested they grab breakfast at the convenience store. Ryu Min agreed, and they made their way to the QS24 store. While Ro-won headed toward the cup noodles, Ryu Min went to the ATM to withdraw some cash. As he punched in the numbers, he saw his savings amounting to 133.21. He withdrew 100,001, equivalent to about $100. Ro-won was surprised by the amount his brother withdrew, knowing the struggles they had faced together. But Ryu Min reassured him that the money was for a future purpose. He then asked Ro-won what he wanted to eat. Ro-won hesitated, mindful of their limited budget, but Ryu-min encouraged him to enjoy as much food as he liked. Ro-won, who had only eaten a cup of noodles the night before, finally decided on pork belly with chili, something he had been craving for a while. Ryu-min smiled, suggesting they treat themselves to hanwoo beef someday. Ro-won, feeling uneasy about the idea, insisted that the pork belly was more than enough for him. Meanwhile, Ryu-min was already envisioning a future where they could afford anything they wanted. Soon, they were enjoying their breakfast, with the pork belly looking especially delicious. Ro-won's face lit up as he took his first bite, savoring the taste. During their meal, Ryu-min excused himself, saying he had something important to do. Ro-won watched him carefully, curious about where his brother was going. Ryu-min returned a short while later, holding a pen and a stack of lottery tickets. Ro-won was shocked to see that his brother had spent all their remaining money on 20 lottery tickets, totaling 100,001. As Ro-won began to panic, Ryu-min calmly checked the numbers on each ticket, confidently selecting the same ones over and over. He then flashed a grin and revealed that these were the winning numbers, explaining that was why he had taken such a bold step. Ro-won was left in disbelief, struggling to comprehend his brother's actions, while Ryu-min remained certain that their gamble would pay off. Later that night, the two brothers returned to their apartment. Ryu-won was glued to his phone, anxiously watching the day's lottery draw. His nerves were getting the best of him. He even started biting his nails, worried they might have just wasted 100,001. As the numbers began to be drawn, Ryu-min lightly teased his younger brother for his behavior, but Ryu-won's focus remained unshaken. The first number announced was 3, followed by 8. When 9 and 38 appeared next, Ryu-won's heart skipped a beat. These were the exact numbers his brother had selected. As the final numbers were revealed, 3, 18, 9, 38, 21, and 1, Ryu-won realized every single one matched. They had won, without even needing the bonus number. Overcome with disbelief, Ryu-won exclaimed in shock, finding it hard to grasp that his brother had been right to purchase those lottery tickets. Tears welled up in his eyes as he began to believe it was all a dream, even asking Ryu-min to pinch him. But Ryu-min just smiled, reassuring him that it was all real. Ryu-won, still in awe, jokingly asked if his brother preferred it to stay a dream. It took several moments for the reality to sink in fully. When it finally did, he jumped up, holding the winning tickets high, and let out a loud shout of joy. His celebration was cut short when Ryu-min urged him to quiet down, concerned that the neighbors might hear. Seeing his brother's excitement brought back memories for Ryu-min. The first time he won the lottery, he had reacted just like Ryu-won, cheering and shouting all night. But after experiencing multiple regressions, it had become a routine event for him. This was all part of a bigger plan. With 11% of the world's population disappearing overnight, global economies had been thrown into chaos. And with the imminent introduction of player-to-player item trading, which would be conducted entirely in cash, Ryu-min knew he needed a substantial amount of money. The next day, after exchanging the tickets, Ryu-won asked his brother how much they would receive. Ryu-min's response was cryptic. His only concern was whether this sum would be enough to shake the world. Later, Ryu-min stood in front of the Nelhia bank building, calm and composed. He had done this many times before. As he approached the teller, he casually mentioned that he was there to collect the first-place prize. The teller congratulated him but grew increasingly curious as he noticed how young Ryu-min appeared, almost like a high school student. The teller then asked where Ryu-min had purchased the winning ticket, and Ryu-min's nonchalant response took the man by surprise. The bank teller suddenly remembered something his colleague had mentioned earlier about the unusually high number of winning tickets in this particular draw, 115 in total. What made it even stranger was that 100 of these tickets had been purchased from a single store, and all on the same day by just one person. The teller recalled that his colleague had told him to treat anyone coming to claim these winnings as a VIP, regardless of the situation. As he stood there, lost in thought, Ryu-min interrupted his reverie. The teller quickly apologized and asked Ryu-min to wait for a moment. Soon after, a man entered the room, introducing himself as Kwon Junho, the president of Nanjia Bank. Recognizing Ryu-min as the winner of multiple lottery tickets, President Junho personally greeted him and extended his congratulations. He then invited Ryu-min to follow him to a more private area. President Junho led Ryu-min to a room where the team responsible for managing lottery ticket sales was stationed. As they entered, a woman greeted them and, noticing Ryu-min, questioned who he was, speculating that he might be the president's son. President Junho quickly clarified, introducing Ryu-min as one of their VVIP clients there to claim his prize. He instructed the woman to ensure Ryu-min's comfort. When the woman learned that Ryu Min had won with 100 lottery tickets in a single sitting, she was initially taken aback but quickly composed herself. She invited Ryu Min to sit and offered him something to drink, but Ryu Min was focused on one thing: collecting his winnings as soon as possible. The woman began the process by verifying the NATO tickets. Ryu Min handed them over quickly, and as she examined the stack, she couldn't help but find the situation almost surreal. She had never encountered anything like this before and briefly entertained the thought that Ryu Min might somehow have known the winning numbers in advance. After a short while, she confirmed that all the tickets were genuine. When Ryu Min inquired about the amount he would be receiving, the woman hesitated, momentarily overwhelmed by the figure. Finally, after a brief pause, she informed Ryu Min that his winnings amounted to approximately $22.5 billion. The winnings totaled over $16 million, an incredible rags-to-riches story. After taxes, Ryu Min ended up with 15 billion won, equal to $11 million. Once the reward was in hand, things moved quickly. That same evening, Ryu Min busied himself with purchasing a new home for them and setting up a stock trading account. He planned to increase his Bitcoin holdings and invest in stocks since he knew Bitcoin's value was predicted to skyrocket by 500% during this time of year. A few days later, the brothers discussed their future plans. Ryu Min showed Ryu Won some pictures of their new home, a place so luxurious that Ryu Won had only ever seen such houses in magazines. However, something puzzled Ryu Won. Despite having more than enough money, his brother had chosen to rent the house instead of buying it outright. Ryu Min explained that they were temporarily low on cash because he had invested everything, $14 million, into Bitcoin. At first, Ryu Won was stunned into silence, unable to comprehend the enormity of the decision. But Ryu Min, confident in his knowledge of future events, assured his brother that this was the right move. He even had a backup plan in case things went wrong, revealing that he still remembered 4 sets of winning lottery numbers from a dream. If necessary, he could simply buy more tickets. Ryu Won's eyes widened in disbelief. He had only seen people dream about winning numbers on TV and had never taken them seriously. He shook his brother, urging him not to forget those numbers. Given the importance of the situation, Ryu Min reassured him that he wouldn't forget. He had already memorized them after all the times he had been through this. Afterward, Ryu Min told his brother it was time to get ready to move into their new home. Ryu Won, still confused, asked where they were going. With a smile, Ryu Min revealed that they were moving in today. Meanwhile, in a distant, isolated location, a powerful punch struck a wall, shattering the point of impact. The one responsible was a man named Young Min. He grinned with satisfaction, knowing that his decision to allocate all his stat points to strength was paying off. The angel had bestowed upon him the rune of strength, which doubled his strength stat, granting him this immense power. As he observed the deep fissures he had caused in the wall, Young Min felt a surge of pride. He believed that even the best fighters would be envious of such a powerful punch. The thought of testing his newfound strength in a real battle excited him, and he couldn't wait to unleash it. Later that day, a young man, seething with anger, knocked on the door of Ryu Min's old home. He was the same person who had a vendetta against Ryu Min, intending to become a fearsome underworld boss. The silence from within the house only fueled his frustration, especially since none of his calls were answered. He had a hunch that Ryu Min had survived their last encounter, and the memory of being looked down upon by Ryu Min, as if he were nothing more than an insect, filled him with rage. He was determined to finish what he had started and kill Ryu Min. The young man assumed that Ryu Min would be hiding inside the house, but despite his aggressive knocking, there was no response. Suddenly, he paused and devised a plan. He loudly declared that he was leaving since no one was inside, hoping to lure someone out by pretending to depart. He waited, listening for even the slightest sound from within, ready to blow the door apart. However, before he could act, an elderly man approached and asked what he was doing in front of his neighbor's door. The young man, annoyed, asked why the old man cared. The elderly man, who turned out to be the landlord, inquired if the young man was there to see a friend. Seizing the opportunity, the young man lied, claiming to be a friend of Ryu Min, and asked the landlord to open the door so he could check on his friend after losing contact. However, the landlord revealed that Ryu Min had moved out, leaving the young man infuriated. He believed Ryu Min had run away without a word, fueling his anger even further. Meanwhile, Ryu Min and Ryu Won stood in awe before a towering, sophisticated skyscraper. "This place is just too tall," Ryu Won remarked, amazed as they walked through the revolving doors. His amazement only grew as he watched his elder brother receive special access passes, reserved for the building's owners. Seeing the security guard verify their identities added to his sense of wonder. It was all so new to him. As they entered the elevator, Ryu-min couldn't help but express how incredible the place was. They were heading to the 43rd floor, where they would be staying. When the elevator doors opened, they were greeted by a spacious and luxurious apartment, a far cry from their previous living conditions. The contrast between their old life and this new beginning was stark, and Ryu-1 could hardly believe they were really here. Inside their new apartment, everything was pristine and brand new. Ryu-1 marveled at the sheer size of the place, realizing it spanned over 330 square meters. As they explored every corner, Ryu-1 couldn't help but comment, "This place might be a bit too large for just the two of us." The terms of the lease were steep, requiring a deposit of 500 million won and a monthly rent of 22 million won, over $16,000. Ryu-1 felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him upon hearing the cost, especially when he recalled how they used to worry about paying as little as 5,001 won at a convenience store. He suggested they consider a smaller, more affordable home, but Ryu-min wasn't swayed. He explained that higher expenditure came with enhanced security, and at this stage, safety was paramount. He revealed that on the first of every month, players suffered from a condition akin to narcolepsy, making them extremely vulnerable. Natural disasters would only heighten the risk, and there were even instances of players hiring assassins. Thus, they needed to be in a secure location when the time came. As Ryu-1 absorbed this information, Ryu-min turned to his younger brother with a warm smile and asked, "So, do you like the house?" Ryu-1 nodded enthusiastically, "Yes, it's amazing." However, despite his words, a shadow of sadness crossed his face. The thought that his brother would soon have to enter the game again, fighting for survival, weighed heavily on his heart. Noticing the change in his brother's demeanor, Ryu-min placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry about that," he said with a confident grin. "I'm strong. I can handle it." Trying to lighten the mood, Ryu-min suggested, "How about we grab something to eat at that Korean restaurant in the building? I heard it's pretty good." As they were preparing to leave, Ryu-min's phone rang. Glancing at the screen, he saw it was Youngmin calling, but he chose not to answer. Instead, he slipped the phone back into his pocket, focusing on spending the evening with his brother. The next day, Ryu-1 came up with an idea to introduce themselves to their new neighbors by handing out rice cakes, a traditional gesture of goodwill. Ryu-min agreed, and the two brothers set out with a box of freshly prepared rice cakes, knocking on doors and offering the sweet treats to their neighbors. As they made their way through the building, they exchanged pleasantries with the residents, who were all pleasantly surprised by the kind gesture. The brothers' warmth and friendliness were met with smiles and thanks from everyone they encountered. Finally, they arrived at the last flat on their list. Unlike the others, this one stood out with its luxurious appearance. Curious about who might live there, Ryu-min and Ryu-1 exchanged glances before Ryu-1 stepped forward and rang the bell. They waited for a moment, and when the door finally opened, they were greeted by an aura of elegance and refinement. A well-dressed woman stood before them, her posture and demeanor exuding an air of importance. He was momentarily distracted when an incredibly stunning woman appeared before them. Blushing, he couldn't help but think her beauty was angelic. Before he could react further, a bodyguard swiftly blocked their view and began questioning their identities, suspecting they were fans. Ryu-1 casually explained that they were Seo Aaron's new neighbors, living one floor below. The bodyguard, noticing the rice cakes in Ryu-1's hands, seemed momentarily confused before realizing that the brothers were trying to introduce themselves. With a cheerful demeanor, Ryu-1 offered the rice cakes, but the bodyguard brusquely informed him that Seo Aaron didn't eat such things. Swiping a card to access the elevator, the bodyguard escorted Seo Aaron, who cast one last glance at the brothers before stepping into the elevator. After they left, Ryu-min expressed his disapproval of their impolite behavior, but Ryu-1 simply stared at the elevator, his thoughts elsewhere. "Don't worry about people like them," Ryu-min said quietly, still watching the closed doors. Ryu-1, coming out of his reverie, gushed about how amazing the experience had been, but it was clear that his brother hadn't grasped what he was talking about. Confused by Ryu-1's reaction, Ryu-min asked what he meant. Placing a hand on his brother's shoulder, Ryu-1 clarified, "I was talking about Seo Aaron." "Who is Seo Aaron?" Ryu-min asked, genuinely puzzled. Meanwhile, in the elevator, Seo Aaron was absorbed in the news on her phone. Headlines about several well-known celebrities passing away flashed across the screen, causing her to frown with concern. As she read about actor Gwang Min-ho taking a leave from his show Criminal Land due to anxiety, her phone buzzed with a text asking if she had seen the story. Opening the message thread, she noticed another text from Gung Se-ho Jin regarding their recently deceased son. With a heavy heart, she replied with a simple, yes. After their conversation, the individual asked if she planned to attend the funeral the next day. She replied that since their sunbae had always taken such good care of them, it was only right for her to be there. Agreeing to join the chatterbox user who had invited her along, she added, "Those sunbaes, far more famous than I ever was, couldn't even make it past the first round." With a sigh, she set down her phone and took a deep breath, recalling how her rune had saved her life. If not for that, she might have ended up as another tragic headline in the news. As she exhaled, she became aware of how much she had begun to see herself as a celebrity, and the thought of her death making headlines troubled her. Lost in her thoughts, she pondered whether she would have gotten as far as she had without the sponsorships, especially since even her luxurious penthouse had been a gift. Unbeknownst to her, a bodyguard had already been trailing her. The bodyguard approached and asked what was on her mind. Startled by his sudden presence, she quickly responded that it was nothing. He took a seat beside her on the couch, offering to lend an ear if she needed to talk. Erin hesitated but eventually confessed her worries about not making it through the next round and her growing concern about how chaotic the world had become. The bodyguard, in a calm and reassuring tone, told her not to worry because he was there to protect her. "You can trust me with your worries," he advised. Her lips curved into a smile as she assured him that she did trust him. Their eyes locked, and Erin was reminded of the day the company had assigned him as her personal bodyguard. She knew she would have failed in the first round if it hadn't been for him, yet she couldn't help but feel wary, suspecting he was there to monitor her as much as to protect her. Sensing her unease, the bodyguard promised that he would protect her no matter what. His sincerity made her blush slightly, and she thanked him with a smile. Changing the subject, Erin mentioned her downstairs neighbor. She joked about how delicious the rice cakes looked, but the bodyguard, with a stern expression, told her bluntly that eating them would only cause her to gain weight. She laughed, suggesting that he might have offended the neighbors and that they had only been trying to be kind. However, the bodyguard's demeanor turned serious as he assured her that the neighbors weren't simply being nice. He explained that their hospitality had ulterior motives and that if they had accepted the rice cakes, the neighbors would have relentlessly pestered them. Despite his warning, she couldn't help but think back to the neighbors' kind faces and found it hard to believe they were anything but good people. Suddenly, she noticed that one of the two figures appeared to be older than 15. "He must have slaughtered 100 goblins just to survive the first round," she remarked in awe. The bodyguard, nodding in agreement, responded, "It does seem that way." Hugging her arm, she marveled at how calm the boy seemed despite the brutal experiences he must have endured. The bodyguard, with a hint of a smirk, told her that she could achieve the same feat. "Killing 100 goblins isn't that hard," he explained, "and those who can't do it are just doomed." Erin silently agreed that her bodyguard was indeed impressive, even by the harsh standards of the otherworld, though she kept her thoughts to herself. However, she couldn't help but compare him to Blackscythe, the man who had left a lasting impression on her. Watching Blackscythe's ruthless efficiency, she almost felt pity for the goblins he cut down. Her curiosity piqued, she asked what Blackscythe's real-world occupation might be. She was certain that if she could team up with him, she'd have a better shot at making it through the second round. She recalled how she had barely scraped through the first round by sheer luck, and the memory filled her with anxiety as she questioned whether she'd survive the next. Meanwhile, at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, January 31st, Ryu-1 turned away from the vacuum cleaner. Opening the door with a broad smile, he greeted his brother enthusiastically and asked if the money had arrived. "Only about 15 billion this time, compared to 17 billion before," Ryu-min replied, slightly puzzled. It was his fourth transaction, so he wondered if the bank had mentioned anything unusual to his brother. Ryu-min recalled that the bank manager had indeed been surprised to see him again. The manager had cautiously inquired about his secret to winning the lottery, gently reminding him that just last week, Ryu-min had told him the strategy had come to him in a dream. Seemingly convinced, the manager had even expressed a hope that he would have similar dreams in the future. Ryu-1 was taken aback by the story. He then asked his brother if he planned to reinvest in Bitcoin. Yes, Ryu-min affirmed, noting that their initial investment had already grown to 150 billion. With a bit of concern, Ryu-1 wondered aloud if they should consider selling their Bitcoin, suspecting that the value might soon drop. But Ryu-min, confident as ever, assured his brother that it wasn't the right time to sell just yet. He gave Ryu-1 a reassuring smile, promising to handle everything. Afterward, Ryu-min suggested they grab something to eat. They walked down the streets with grocery bags in hand, their spirits lifted as they enjoyed a meal of pasta at a nearby restaurant. On Tuesday, January 31st, at 11:55 p.m., Ryu-1 remained at his brother's side, holding his hand tightly as they sat together. Though Ryu-1 was still awake, worry crept into his thoughts. Squeezing his brother's hand, he urged him to come back alive. Ryu Min, with a confident smile, reassured his brother that there was no need to worry, reminding him of the power he had unleashed on someone known as Bang Taeju. Despite knowing his brother's strength, Ryu Won couldn't help but feel concerned. Patting his brother gently on the head, Ryu Min advised him to stop worrying and get some rest. He promised that they would see each other later, assuring him that by the time he woke up, he would have already returned from the other world. Just in time, Ryu Min was transported to another realm, his soul glowing with a radiant light. Meanwhile, other players began to arrive under a gloomy, overcast sky. One player asked if they had arrived successfully, while another remarked with amusement at the speed of their travel. While some players cowered in fear, others took a moment to assess their surroundings, realizing that they were in a new location. One of the players, who had achieved the highest rank in the previous round, noticed a black sign and paused. As Ryu Min scanned the area, he saw that many people recognized him and deliberately kept their distance. Among the players, he spotted Yongmin, which made him grow impatient, wondering when the angel would make her appearance. Suddenly, the angel descended from the sky, her gaze fixed on Ryu Min, who stood with a fierce expression. She asked if everyone had arrived, her presence causing a stir among the players. The players quickly realized that this was not the same angel they had encountered before, and a wave of anxiety spread among them as they questioned what might have happened. The angel explained that the angel who had overseen the first round had been involved in an accident and couldn't make it. She urged everyone to remain calm. With a menacing expression, she announced that she would be their guide for the second round. As the details of the second round's quest appeared on the screen, the players focused intently. Their task was to choose a zone representative within the next 3 hours. However, the instructions seemed vague, and the players began to discuss various interpretations while staring at their screens. One player suggested that they might have to battle monsters again, but the uncertainty lingered among them. One player speculated that perhaps everyone could survive this round, while another expressed surprise at the number of people who had failed before. Sensing the players' confusion, the angel decided to provide some clarity. She explained that in the second round, all they needed to do was choose a zone representative. It wasn't a combat round. The chosen representative would hold significant power, able to command others to perform tasks or even order their deaths. She reiterated that they had 3 hours to select their representative. The players were impressed by the authority granted in this round. Curious, one player asked if that was all there was to it. The angel confirmed that since this round was more of a rest period, once they voted, they would be marked as having passed and sent home. The players felt a wave of relief at the prospect of completing such a simple task without facing any life-threatening danger. As the timer started, the angel urged them to discuss and decide who they wanted as their zone representative. The players, grinning, joked with one another, wondering if they'd all still be alive after voting in 3 hours. They found humor in the easy task and the potential power the representative would wield. However, Hwang Yongmin felt disappointed that he wouldn't get to use his combat skills this round. One of his friends tried to console him, suggesting he let it go since they would all survive after voting. But Yongmin couldn't shake his frustration. He had invested heavily in his strength stat, and now it seemed wasted. Overhearing the conversation, Ryu Min quickly realized that Yongmin must have obtained the rune of strength. He surveyed the situation, noting how Yongmin's rune and the current circumstances were unfolding just as they always had. Deciding that the debate over who to support wasn't his priority, Ryu Min moved away from the group. He knew that if there was a main quest, there had to be a side mission as well. He recalled that the hidden quest for the second round involved obtaining a class. Tightening his grip on his dagger, Ryu Min was eager to level up quickly, knowing this was essential for class enrollment. When a goblin appeared, he lunged forward, and with a loud, unsettling noise, the creature moved to attack. Ryu Min swiftly countered, managing to decapitate the goblin. A notification screen appeared, informing him that he had defeated a hobgoblin. His triple XP buff was active, and he had 1 kill out of 100. Additional notifications revealed that his experience level had increased to 9%, and he had earned 15 gold. The Rune of Slaughter also boosted all his stats by 1%. Ryu Min decided that venturing into the forest to hunt was a smart choice. He knew that where there was one goblin, there would surely be more, and he was right. Soon enough, a group of sinister-looking goblins emerged from the shadows, causing a grin to spread across his face. Standing confidently in the center of the forest, he waited for the goblins to make their move. With a swift and precise strike, he smashed one goblin in the head and swiftly followed up with a slash of his dagger, maintaining his calm demeanor throughout. A notification flashed on his screen, informing him that he had slain another hobgoblin, bringing his total to 5 out of the 100 required kills. The bodies of the fallen goblins were scattered across the forest floor. Another notification indicated that the Rune of Slaughter was now enhancing all his stats by 50%. He had leveled up again. The countdown displayed that there were still 2 hours, 29 minutes, and 24 seconds left before voting closed. Wiping his chin, Ryu-min opened his stat window, curious if only 30 minutes had passed. It showed that he had reached level 9. He decided to focus on increasing his agility. While Hwang Yongmin's Rune of Strength was advantageous in boosting power, Ryu-min understood that it wouldn't be effective in every situation. His agility stat rose from 18 to 24. He knew that no matter how strong a player was, they would be vulnerable if they couldn't dodge a critical attack quickly enough. The game's stats were divided into 4 key categories: strength, intelligence, agility, and luck. Strength affected defense power, endurance, and physical damage, while intelligence influenced mental fortitude, calculation speed, and magical damage. After another glance at his stat window, he saw that his agility had now increased to 30. Agility improved both movement and attack speed and enhanced the ability to dodge. Luck influenced critical damage, item drops, and additional gold rewards. As a Grim Reaper class that dealt both magical and physical damage, Ryu-min knew that balancing all his stats was crucial. Each one was important in its own way. Just then, he sensed something behind him. Pivoting swiftly, he scanned his surroundings to identify who or what was there. He was startled that someone had been following him. He had been so engrossed in the battle that he hadn't noticed earlier. This situation was unsettling. It had never happened before. Raising his dagger, he demanded that the person reveal themselves and state their intentions. If they failed to comply, they would need to be prepared to face the consequences. A single footstep echoed slowly before a woman emerged from the shadows. Ryu-min recognized her instantly. It was the actress he had encountered before. He couldn't help but question whether she had truly been the one following him. Apologetically, she admitted to trailing him. Just then, another figure appeared, a man who also offered an apology. He urged Ryu-min to calm down, insisting that their intentions were not hostile. The man introduced himself as Sang-chul. Ryu-min's expression darkened when he realized who Sang-chul was, Ma Jianrock's right-hand man. Ma Jianrock, also known as the Heavenly Demon, was the eldest son of the country's most powerful corporate dynasty. He was someone Ryu-min had been targeting for a while. Ryu-min knew that having someone like Ma Jianrock by his side would make him stronger, and he needed a priest connected to Ma Jianrock to support him in the 20th round. Ryu-min was taken aback by the unexpected encounter with Ma Jianrock's right-hand man so soon. He began to wonder why Sang-chul was with Seo Rin and suspected that Sang-chul might be her bodyguard. Considering that many celebrities were sponsored by Ma Jianrock's company, the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. Despite this, Ryu-min felt uneasy knowing that the future had shifted from what he expected. He asked them how long they had been trailing him. Seo Rin admitted that they had been following him ever since they saw him enter the forest and sincerely apologized for it. Ryu-min then demanded to know why they had been following him. Seo Rin nervously explained that their intentions weren't harmful, they simply wanted to make him an offer. She hesitantly suggested that they form a team, knowing he had won the first round. Ryu-min chuckled at the idea of forming a group, dismissing it as irrelevant unless she could actually be useful to him. He mocked her openly. Seo Rin found herself at a loss for words, unable to counter his remarks. Ryu-min bluntly told them that he didn't need their help and would do just fine on his own. He advised them to turn back and stop wasting his time. Turning away, he made it clear that he had no interest in joining a team. They stared at him in disbelief. Seo Rin let out a deep sigh and sank to her knees as Sang-chul muttered under his breath, commenting on how arrogant Ryu-min was. Seo Rin tried to explain that there was a reason for Ryu-min's existence, but his overwhelming aura made her uneasy. Sang-chul remarked that even if someone had a knife to their face, they wouldn't be as intimidating as Ryu-min. Seo Rin felt a pang of disappointment that her plan to team up with him had fallen apart, and Sang-chul reiterated his earlier point, that people with egos as large as Ryu-min's never work well in groups. It was an unfortunate turn of events. Seo Rin couldn't help but reflect on the situation, but Sang-chul quickly reassured her, telling her that it wasn't a humiliating experience. He felt that their time following Ryu-min had been wasted. Seo Rin, trying to shift the conversation, admitted that she hadn't expected to encounter monsters in the forest. She suggested that they spend the rest of their time hunting them instead. Sang-chul agreed that it wasn't a bad idea, and they set off to carry out the plan. The forest was dense with towering trees and thick underbrush. Meanwhile, Ryu-min, hearing noises from the bushes, instinctively attacked a goblin that emerged. He found it infuriating that, despite his tight schedule, they had the audacity to ask him to collaborate. With swift precision, his dagger sliced through the goblin's flesh as he remained focused on his primary goal, leveling up. A notification popped up, confirming that he had defeated another hobgoblin. His current kill count stood at 60 out of 100, and the effects of the Rune of Slaughter had boosted all his stats by 60%. Suddenly, a pack of wolf-like creatures, gnolls, appeared. Ryu Min felt a rush of satisfaction at the sight of so many gnolls approaching at once. They lunged at him in unison, weapons poised for attack. Ryu Min stood his ground confidently, gripping his dagger tightly. Using both the fallen bodies of the gnolls and his dagger, he quickly dealt successive blows to the advancing creatures. Another notification confirmed the defeat of a gnoll, bringing his kill count to 65 and raising his stats by 65% thanks to the Rune of Slaughter. He had now reached level 10. His hard work paid off as a series of notifications informed him that he had met the requirements for class advancement. With his newfound level, Ryu Min could now access the store and a hidden subquest. The subquest window indicated that in order to obtain a class and advancement items, players needed to level up before the voting period ended. Success in this quest would also reward them with a daily item sale ticket, offering a 50% discount. Many players who were unaware of the subquest often found themselves confused, not knowing how to select a class or where to find the necessary advancement items. While everyone agreed that obtaining a class was crucial, the challenge lay in understanding the specific requirements to acquire the advancement item. For example, warriors needed to defeat monsters within an hour and increase their strength stat to at least 10. Berserkers had to hunt while sustaining injuries for a certain period. Assassins needed to successfully deceive monsters multiple times. Quick advancement was key, otherwise, players risked remaining beginners indefinitely. Ryu Min activated the Angel's Blood, and immediately, a status window appeared before him, offering a choice: do you want to select the Reaper profession? Without hesitation, he clicked yes. As a reward for his decision, he received the Reaper's Rune, a powerful artifact that significantly reduces the chances of being detected by enemies during the night. Wasting no time, Ryu Min activated the Reaper's Rune. In the world of the game, where there are 6 ranks from beginner to grandmaster, players can unlock new skills as they level up. The use of the Reaper's Rune granted Ryu Min the skill Seal of Death, a formidable ability that would serve him well in future battles. In addition to this, he was rewarded with a weapon befitting his new profession, the Reaper's Scythe. Ryu Min was the first player to advance, and as a reward for his achievement, a notification window informed him that he had received a random gold pouch. His strategic approach and timely execution had paid off, setting him apart from the rest. In addition to his other rewards, Ryu Min also gained the neutral skill, Tracking, as a special benefit for being the first player to advance. According to the notification window, this skill allows him to track the precise location of a designated target, provided that both the target's face and nickname match. This valuable skill could be purchased for 20,000 gold. A grin spread across Ryu Min's face as he reviewed the details on his screen. With enough gold in his possession, he decided to put the tracking ability to the test by targeting Youngmin. The tracking system confirmed a match between Youngmin's face and nickname, indicating his exact location as 190 meters away from Ryu Min. Following the instructions on the notification window, Ryu Min saw a glowing line appear on the ground, guiding him directly to Youngmin's location. He deduced that Youngmin must have also entered the forest, considering how much closer he was now compared to their last encounter, where Youngmin was 2 kilometers away. This piqued Ryu Min's curiosity as he contemplated whether or not to confront Youngmin. Elsewhere in the forest, Seo Rin and Eun Sang-chul were struggling, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Suddenly, Seo Rin cried out in pain and collapsed face-first onto the ground. She informed Sang-chul that she had injured her leg and couldn't continue running. Sang-chul, with urgency in his voice, reminded her that they had to keep moving or risk being discovered. Despite the pain, he urged her to stand up. Seo Rin apologized, describing the searing pain where an arrow had struck her earlier. Sang-chul's face darkened as he considered the possibility that injuries sustained in this world might affect their real bodies. Nevertheless, he tried to encourage her, assuring her that if they could survive this, they would be able to return home. Seo Rin, gritting her teeth, resolved to push through the pain. Suddenly, a voice interrupted them, asking, "Where do you think you're going with an injury like that?" Startled, they quickly turned to face the source. It was Youngmin, standing with 3 menacing figures behind him, all wearing sinister smiles. Youngmin mocked Seo Rin, sarcastically commenting that her injury didn't seem to be painful enough yet. Eun Sang-chul felt trapped and fury welled up inside him. He clenched his teeth, cursing under his breath at the situation, especially at the acquaintance he bitterly referred to as a stupid woman in his mind. Realizing that they might have no choice but to fight, he drew his weapon and assumed a battle stance. His readiness to fight seemed to catch Youngmin off guard, momentarily impressing him. A sly grin spread across Youngmin's face, mirrored by his lackeys. With a mocking tone, he addressed Sangchul as old man and asked if he was actually thinking about fighting them. The four men wore expressions of arrogant confidence. Youngmin then told Sangchul to use his eyes and count how many of them there were, clearly enjoying the intimidation. Sangchul's anger flared as he demanded to know why they were being treated this way when they hadn't done anything to provoke him. Youngmin, maintaining his taunting demeanor, denied any wrongdoing. Confusion etched across Sangchul's face as he questioned why they had suddenly decided to attack. Youngmin, still smirking, revealed that they needed something only Seo Rin could provide. Seo Rin and Sangchul exchanged bewildered glances. Youngmin then admitted that his interest lay solely in the girl standing next to Sangchul. He made it clear that they had no interest in Sangchul himself, emphasizing that their attention was focused entirely on Seo Rin. As they conversed, the three men with Youngmin speculated whether the girl was indeed the famous Seo Rin. One of them noted that her face and nickname confirmed it was her. Another suggested that perhaps someone was merely imitating her, trying to take on her identity. They continued discussing how little it mattered to them, given that appearances could be so deceiving. Seo Rin's face paled in horror as she listened to their conversation. Meanwhile, Youngmin turned back to Sangchul and offered him a deal: leave Seo Rin behind, and he could walk away unharmed. This only fueled Sangchul's rage. In his mind, Youngmin should have made that clear from the beginning. If he had, Sangchul might have left Seo Rin without a second thought. He glanced sideways at her, inwardly cursing the situation. He had no intention of risking his life for her, yet he was faced with a significant dilemma. If he failed to protect Seo Rin, he would surely disappoint his employer, Director Ma Jiangak. Determined not to back down, Sangchul assumed a fighting stance, signaling that he had no intention of abandoning Seo Rin. Youngmin, visibly entertained, asked if Sangchul was seriously considering a fight. Sangchul, gritting his teeth, warned them that what they were doing was against the law. Youngmin burst out laughing at this, finding it utterly ridiculous. He sarcastically asked what laws applied in this world and whether Sangchul planned to report him once they returned to reality. Youngmin taunted him further, questioning what evidence Sangchul could possibly provide and daring him to try. He even joked that their appearances in this world might be entirely different from their real-life selves. Sangchul, seething with frustration, couldn't deny that Youngmin had a point. He knew that reasoning with Youngmin wouldn't work and that, despite his injuries, he had no choice but to fight. Youngmin wasn't going to be swayed by words alone. Just then, Youngmin's attention shifted. He was startled to see an old acquaintance, Black Scythe. The figure was casually leaning against a tree, observing the scene with a calm demeanor. Youngmin was visibly taken aback by Black Scythe's unexpected appearance. "What's going on here?" Black Scythe asked, his voice cutting through the tension. His gaze fixed directly on Sangchul, and he interrupted Youngmin before he could respond. "I wasn't talking to you," he said, dismissing Youngmin's attempt to interject. Annoyed, Youngmin told him to mind his own business and leave them alone. Ignoring Youngmin, Black Scythe turned his attention back to Sangchul. "Tell me what's happening," he demanded. Without hesitation, Sangchul explained the situation, revealing how they were ambushed by Youngmin and his men, who were after Seo Rin. Desperate, Sangchul pleaded for Black Scythe's help, promising to owe him a favor in return. Black Scythe's gaze shifted to Youngmin. "Is what he said true?" he asked, his tone sharp. Youngmin, brushing off the accusation, told Black Scythe that it didn't concern him and that he should move on. But Black Scythe wasn't deterred. He stepped closer, noting the menacing red aura that surrounded Youngmin. Youngmin and his lackeys, sensing the growing tension, nervously questioned what Black Scythe intended to do. As his weapon began to materialize in his hand, Black Scythe coldly informed them that he wouldn't abandon someone who was injured. Seo Rin and Sangchul felt a wave of relief, while Youngmin's anger flared. Black Scythe knew that helping them wasn't just an act of kindness. He calculated that by assisting Sangchul, he could gain favor with Ma Jiangak, and having someone like Ma Jiangak indebted to him would be a valuable asset. Moreover, he simply didn't like Youngmin. Youngmin and his men grew increasingly anxious as Black Scythe's intentions became clear. In a desperate attempt to regain control, Youngmin ordered Black Scythe to back off, threatening to kill him if he continued. But Black Scythe only smiled, taunting them with the question, "Do you really want to fight me? What's the problem?" Youngmin's fury reached its peak. To him, Black Scythe's question was absurd, almost laughable. He wondered if Black Scythe would be so confident if he truly understood the kind of monster he was dealing with. The memory of Black Scythe effortlessly defeating goblins and claiming the top rank in the last encounter flashed through Youngmin's mind, and his eyes widened in shock. Black Scythe lowered his scythe to the ground and, with a calm yet menacing tone, told Youngmin to let him know if he wanted to end the fight. The four men watched nervously as the scythe's blade moved, their fear evident in their eyes. Youngmin, visibly shaken, asked if Black Scythe would really let him go. Black Scythe crossed his arms, a hint of amusement in his voice, and replied that he might consider it, if Youngmin got on his knees and begged for his life with sincerity. The realization that Black Scythe was trying to humiliate him in front of his friends and Arin twisted Youngmin's expression from smug triumph to despair. Despite his rising irritation, he had no desire to engage in a fight if it could be avoided. He scoffed at Black Scythe, but as he did, a thought crossed his mind: he had the power to shatter a wall with just his bare hands. Maybe, just maybe, he could take down Black Scythe with a single strike. A smug smile crept onto his face as he entertained this possibility. He glared at Black Scythe and spat out, "You've crossed the line." He clenched his fists, preparing for a fight, and taunted Black Scythe, asking if he really wanted him to kneel and beg. With a menacing tone, he added, "Do you want to die?" Youngmin planned to close the distance between them and land a devastating punch. In his mind, there was no way Black Scythe could survive a blow strong enough to crush a brick wall. But just as he was about to strike, Black Scythe calmly set his weapon aside. Youngmin was baffled. Why would he discard his weapon? Black Scythe, exuding confidence, explained that it wouldn't be fair to fight an unarmed opponent while he was armed. Winning like that, he said, would be too boring. Enraged by the perceived arrogance, Youngmin cursed Black Scythe's foolishness. He moved into attack, but before he could react, Black Scythe suddenly shifted behind him. Youngmin, thinking this was his chance, swung with all his might, ready to land a powerful punch. But to his shock, Black Scythe effortlessly dodged his blow and retaliated with a powerful kick to his stomach. The force of the kick sent Youngmin flying, crashing into the distance, leaving him stunned and gasping for air. Black Scythe watched impassively as Youngmin's body sailed through the air, one foot still raised from the powerful kick. Youngmin landed with a thud, groaning in pain as he knelt on the ground, his curses directed at Black Scythe. With a cold expression, Black Scythe warned him to stop cursing, saying, "Your foul mouth will rot my ears," before delivering another brutal kick. Youngmin gasped as the force of the blow sent him sprawling, his hand instinctively reaching up to soothe his aching face. Without hesitation, Black Scythe grabbed Youngmin by the collar, hoisting him up with one hand while keeping him at arm's length. He then began to rain down punches with his other hand, each blow landing with a bone-crunching impact. Youngmin, dazed and reeling from the assault, thought to himself that it didn't feel like a fist hitting him, it felt more like being struck by a sledgehammer. He couldn't comprehend how Black Scythe could be this strong. Is he as powerful as me? Youngmin wondered, unable to fathom how Black Scythe could possess such strength without a rune to enhance it. As he looked up at Black Scythe's calm yet focused face, one of his friends shouted his name, while another urged the archer to take action. The archer, maintaining perfect form, quickly drew his bow and loosed a lightning-fast arrow aimed directly at Black Scythe. Arin, sensing the danger, screamed for Black Scythe to dodge. With reflexes as sharp as his blade, Black Scythe sidestepped the arrow just in time. Despite the fear etched on his face, the archer fired another arrow. But Black Scythe was already moving, zigzagging toward him with unnerving speed, effortlessly dodging each shot. As he closed the distance, Black Scythe remarked, "You must have been lucky to find a bow while hunting. Too bad you crossed my path during a fight." With a swift motion, Black Scythe drew his weapon, and in one fluid strike, he slashed at the archer. Blood sprayed through the air as the archer let out a cry of agony, his face contorted in terror. The sight of their comrade falling only deepened the fear in the remaining two men, yet they still tried to muster their courage. They took up defensive stances, shouting at Black Scythe to back off and leave them alone. One of the men charged at Black Scythe, dagger in hand, cursing as he lunged forward. Black Scythe responded with a mocking smile, his expression almost amused. In an instant, he activated the seal of death. Above the man's head, a red mark appeared, resembling an eye with a skull at its center, a symbol of impending doom. Gripping his scythe tightly, Black Scythe unleashed a devastating swing. The red-hued blades of wind that followed tore through the air, slashing the man's shins with such force that he collapsed to the ground, screaming in agony as blood splattered everywhere. The remaining man, witnessing this horrific scene, was paralyzed with fear, his confidence shattered. Black Scythe lunged at the man with blinding speed, noting that the mere fact they dared to use weapons against him showed some level of resolve. With a powerful swing, his scythe sliced through the man's arm, eliciting a piercing scream. The ominous seal of death hovered above the man's head, a clear sign that the next strike would be even more devastating. As expected, the scythe cut through the armor with ease, doubling the damage and leaving the man clutching his deep wound in sheer agony. As the men writhed on the ground, their faces contorted in pain, Black Scythe observed them coldly. This can't be it, he thought. He knew he had to instill fear so deep they would never dare to cross his path again. When he approached, they whimpered and pleaded for mercy, begging him to spare them. Without a word, Black Scythe flicked his scythe, sending blood splattering with the movement. Another scream tore through the air. Taking a deep breath, Black Scythe decided he was finished with these men, ready to move on to the next target. His sharp gaze fell on a figure hiding behind a tree. Hiding won't help you, Black Scythe called out, his voice chilling. In a flash, a blade of wind sliced through the young man's arm, causing him to cry out in pain as blood spurted from the wound. Stop acting like a child, Black Scythe admonished, his tone devoid of sympathy. The young man's pain barely scratched the surface of what he had inflicted on others. Black Scythe's scythe struck again and again, each blow drawing a scream from the boy as he was mercilessly cut down. Sangchul and Arin watched in stunned silence, witnessing the brutal efficiency of Black Scythe's assault. Sangchul was particularly struck by how Black Scythe could so ruthlessly dismember an opponent who had already lost the will to fight. As Black Scythe severed the boy's arms and moved on to his leg, Sangchul couldn't help but admire the cold precision. It might seem extreme, Sangchul thought, but I appreciate that level of decisiveness. In his mind, Black Scythe rivaled even his director. Finally, Black Scythe turned to Sangchul and Arin. Are you two all right? He asked, his voice steady. Sangchul nodded, acknowledging that they were safe because of him. You don't have to worry about Yongmin and his crew anymore, Black Scythe assured them, his tone leaving no room for doubt. Black Scythe suggested they should go and vote, seeing as the four men were too battered to move. In unison, Sangchul and Arin bowed deeply, expressing their gratitude. Arin hesitated, then asked, will they die? Black Scythe shrugged. Does it matter if they die? They aren't even worth calling animals, he replied coldly, his bluntness catching Arin off guard. Observing her troubled expression, he realized she was far too sensitive. He wondered why she seemed to care so much about the lives of these men as if she were some saint. Perhaps she was concerned about her public image as a celebrity, he thought. Turning to Sangchul, Black Scythe asked, do you have a question? Yeah, Sangchul responded confidently. Why did you decide to spare them? Even if you killed them, there wouldn't be any repercussions in the real world. The young man's face paled at the question. Black Scythe replied calmly, if you're asking whether there was a specific reason I let them live, there wasn't. He continued, but the real reason I didn't finish them off is simple, there's nothing to gain from killing them. Sangchul was puzzled by the notion of there being no benefit. But even so, he insisted, it's not wise to leave any potential threats alive. Threats? Black Scythe echoed, glancing at the trembling men. If these guys are still capable of causing trouble, then I'd say the game's already in a poor state. Besides, reducing the number of players doesn't benefit anyone. The more, the merrier. After a moment, Sangchul nodded, understanding his reasoning. Makes sense, he admitted. Sangchul considered that fewer players meant fewer available spots for those who completed each round. He found himself admiring Black Scythe's unique perspective on the game's mechanics, realizing that Black Scythe saw things differently from most players. I get it, Sangchul nodded. From now on, we'll stop thinking about the humanity of this game. With that, Black Scythe turned to leave, but Sangchul quickly called out, wait. Give me your account number, and I'll make sure you're compensated in the real world. Black Scythe waved it off. Forget about it, he said, continuing on his way. Sangchul was stunned by his refusal to accept any reward. Helping without any expectation of payment was rare in their world. He resolved to report the encounter to the president as soon as he returned to reality. A groan from behind caught his attention. It was one of the young men they had fought. Sangchul felt a surge of anger, his gaze turning lethal. But he remembered Black Scythe's words, it wouldn't benefit them to finish them off. Holding back, he spat in their direction and urged Arin to leave with him. Back in the main field, the atmosphere was tense. Players were campaigning fiercely to be chosen as the region's representative, each claiming they were the best choice. The heated arguments escalated into a physical altercation, with one player grabbing another by the collar. As the crowd tried to intervene, another participant stepped forward, declaring that anyone with such a quick temper shouldn't be representing them and offering herself as a better candidate. Then, a young man joined the fray, boasting about his father being a congressman and insisting he deserved the position. Many in the crowd eyed him with skepticism, doubting the truth of his claims. Amid the chaos, a voice rose from the crowd, commanding everyone's attention and halting the argument. The speaker, known by the nickname Mint Chocolate Boy, grabbed everyone's attention and reminded them that the voting would end in just 2 hours. He urged the players not to waste time arguing and to cast their votes as soon as possible. One of the players asked him how they should decide who to vote for. Mint Chocolate Boy confidently replied that he had a practical solution. Curious, everyone focused on him, eager to hear his idea. He smirked inwardly, pleased at how easily the crowd hung on his every word once again. With a dark grin, he thought about how the players had once more fallen for his persuasive tactics. At first, he had been disappointed when he received the persuasion rune as his random rune fragment. He had looked at it with disdain, noting that the rune increased his chances of persuasion only if the target was particularly talkative. Moreover, it wouldn't work on anyone with a higher level than his own, and it seemed completely useless against monsters who couldn't speak. But soon, Mint Chocolate Boy realized how to use the rune to his advantage. While on the battlefield, when other players were busy slaying goblins and sharing strategies, he had approached a group of men, telling them a woman was in great danger and needed immediate help. He advised them to drop everything and go to her aid. The men, influenced by his rune's effect, followed his advice without hesitation, abandoning their targets and rushing off. Mint Chocolate Boy then swooped in to finish off the weakened goblins, easily meeting the 100 kill requirement. Now, with the voting underway, he suggested a more structured approach to choosing a representative. Let's narrow down the candidates to just 5, he proposed, and vote among them. The players, realizing the wisdom in his words, quickly agreed. They understood that if everyone continued campaigning for themselves, they would never reach a decision. Mint Chocolate Boy took the lead in organizing the nominations, relishing how smoothly his plan was unfolding. If everything went as expected, he would soon position himself as the representative of the region. He asked the crowd to raise their hands and nominate anyone they believed should be recommended. One of the players, who had been advocating for himself earlier, eagerly shot his hand up. However, Mint Chocolate Boy quickly pointed out that nominating themselves was against the rules and would just repeat their earlier mistakes. The audience began murmuring in agreement, with many voices echoing, "Mint Chocolate Boy is right." Inwardly, Mint Chocolate Boy felt confident, thinking it would be a simple task to manipulate this group. Most of the attendees were strangers to one another, caught up in their thoughts and unsure whom to nominate. Meanwhile, a few others were hesitant to suggest anyone but themselves, worried about losing their chance. Sensing the growing uncertainty, Mint Chocolate Boy remained patient, understanding that this silence would ultimately lead to only the most notable names being suggested. At last, a participant raised his hand and proposed Mint Chocolate Boy as a candidate. Excellent, he mused silently. The person who nominated him justified the choice, stating that having a rational and capable leader would be in their best interest. Mint Chocolate Boy pretended to be surprised by the nomination, even as another player jumped in to commend his ability to manage the situation effectively. He accepted the compliments with a gracious smile while inwardly laughing at how easily he had won them over. Then, another participant nominated Black Scythe. Mint Chocolate Boy's grin widened. He knew Black Scythe's recent victory made him a logical contender. Next, a player named Life is a Documentary put forth the second-place finisher, followed by someone else suggesting Black Dragon in My Right Hand as a third candidate. Mint Chocolate Boy tallied 4 names and asked the crowd if there were any more nominations for the 5th spot. When no one else volunteered, he announced that the 4 candidates were confirmed. He suggested that each nominee should speak to the crowd before the final vote and offered to go first, confident in his ability to sway the masses. Winning over these fools will be a breeze, he thought smugly. Suddenly, a voice cut through his thoughts, openly challenging him. It was Life is a Documentary, the player ranked second in the region, who seemed visibly annoyed. "I can't listen to another word this Mint Chocolate Boy is spouting," he declared. Mint Chocolate Boy turned to him and asked what his issue was. "Do you seriously think life is easy?" came the sharp retort from Life is a Documentary, his gaze filled with a menacing intensity that seemed to challenge Mint Chocolate Boy's entire stance. Life is a Documentary asked Mint Chocolate Boy if people always followed his instructions without question. As Mint Chocolate Boy pondered this, a concerned expression crossed his face. He began to realize the extent of his influence, but quickly brushed the thought aside, convincing himself it wasn't entirely true. When Mint Chocolate Boy was asked to nominate someone for the regional representative, Life is a Documentary grew visibly agitated and accused him of being a manipulator. "You're crossing the line," Mint Chocolate Boy retorted sharply, defending himself. He reminded everyone of a proverb, a person's face and demeanor reflect their true nature. He questioned why such harsh language had to be used in what was meant to be a discussion about leadership. For a moment, he seemed satisfied with his response, feeling that he had made his point. However, Life is a Documentary didn't back down. He sneered, asking whether Mint Chocolate Boy had the nerve to preach to him about life. "You're playing a dangerous game," he warned, his tone threatening. The situation escalated quickly, and Mint Chocolate Boy found himself taken aback by the intensity of the challenge. He realized that his usual methods of persuasion were failing, and the tension in the room grew palpable. Seeing his influence slip away, Life is a Documentary desperately appealed to the crowd, urging them to vote for him and ignore the other candidates. "Support me, or face the consequences," he threatened, his voice tinged with desperation. But Mint Boy mocked him openly, asking if he genuinely believed people would listen to his threats. He advised him to stop embarrassing himself and leave. The atmosphere grew colder as Life is a Documentary, his expression serious and menacing. Then, in a flash of violence, he lunged forward, striking Mint Boy. Blood sprayed, and the crowd felt a chill run down their spine as they realized the victim had been stabbed in the neck. The wounded player crumpled to the ground, blood flowing freely. The gravity of the situation hit Mint Chocolate Boy hard. He was witnessing a deadly turn of events. Life is a Documentary glared at him, reminding Mint Chocolate Boy of the earlier warning: he would kill anyone who crossed him. As Mint Chocolate Boy's eyes widened in shock, he let out a strangled cry. His body trembled, and then he collapsed to the floor, lifeless. Panic erupted among the crowd as they grasped the brutal reality of what had just happened. The label of killer seemed to hang in the air around Life is a Documentary, whose weapon still dripped with the blood of Mint Chocolate Boy. He turned to the crowd, his eyes cold, his voice challenging. "So what?" he snarled. "If anyone has a problem, step forward." A player, terrified, called him insane, pointing a trembling finger. Life is a Documentary only grinned wider, declaring that if no one confronted him, he would come to them instead. He moved like a blur, cutting down everyone in his path with swift, ruthless precision, as if fueled by some dark, burning passion. With each strike, he seemed more exhilarated, shouting that this was the best scenario: no cameras, no reporters, no restrictions. He reveled in the violence, delighted that he could kill as many as he wished without consequence. The blood of those he slaughtered stained his clothes, and he turned his blood-soaked dagger on the remaining players who have yet to cast their votes. "Support me," he demanded, "or face death." Fear gripped everyone's faces, their expressions twisted in horror. Seeing this, Life is a Documentary gave a wicked grin. He knew that fear was now his ally. The crowd, terrified of what he might do, realized they had little choice but to support him. Life is a Documentary had set his sights on Black Scythe, plotting his demise to clear his path to the top. Meanwhile, in the depths of the forest, Ryu Min continued to hone his skills, wielding his scythe with relentless determination. His goal was to grow stronger with every swing. As he fought on, a notification flashed before him, revealing he had just defeated Knowles. The tally of his kills now stood at 265, far surpassing the original target of 100. With this achievement, the Butcher rune he possessed activated, doubling all his stats by 100%. In addition, he was granted a threefold experience buff, accelerating his growth. Ryu Min had reached a new milestone, level 16. Yet, when he glanced at his status window, he realized that his leveling pace was beginning to slow. Despite having slain over 200 monsters, he had only managed to gain 2 levels in the past 2 hours. While the progress was slowing, hunting had become noticeably easier, likely due to the powerful combination of the Butcher and Reaper runes. These runes not only enhanced his weapon's attack power but also amplified all of his stats. Feeling satisfied with his gains, Ryu Min decided it was time to head back. Sheathing his weapon, he turned to make his way back to the starting point. Suddenly, the countdown reached 0, and a notification window appeared, signaling that the voting period had begun. A radiant golden light enveloped Ryu Min's body, signifying that all players in the vicinity were being summoned back to the starting point. The time had come to cast their votes. As the local players gathered, 4 wounded figures emerged, those who had earlier fought against Black Scythe. Their battered appearance caught everyone's attention, leaving the other players in shock at the sight of their injuries. That, we must conclude for today. If you enjoyed this part and want to see what happens next, please like and subscribe. Thank you.